Be cool, be kind, be classy. The cupcakes so sweet and sexy. Have fun and enjoy the journey. Just have a good attorney. No big whoop, no biggie. She lives near New York City. And not just a YouTube show. When you know, you better grab a straw. Learn about the law. It's cool here in the shade, sipping motions of lemonade. Cool heads will prevail, kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Oh, Melanie Little is going live. Oh no, where is Melanie? Follow the island's melody. Is a concert within reach. No surprise, she's at Jones Beach. She heard some music far away. Captain Jack Sack Harbor Bay. He sings and his piano plays. Not all sounds are waterways. Speaking Yiddish or Latin, it's not just for Manhattan. It's for Goethe and Machegas. Ridiculous that insanus. Oy vey, Marcus. Proset, that's for schmucks. Be cool, be kind, be classy. My cupcakes are sweet and sassy. And not just a YouTube show. When you know. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Melanie Little is going live.
Hello, my friends. Hello. And I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas and Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah is still going on. And all of the things and stuff and how exciting it is to be back with you. I did a pre-recorded video last night, like in the middle of the night, which I never ever do. But the decision came out on the Sidney Powell trial, who is not the political figure Sidney Powell, but the girl Sidney Powell, who at 19 years old smashed her mother over the head with a cast iron skillet and then stabbed her 30 times and then was convicted. They did not find her not guilty by reason of insanity, but on appeal, the appeals court has reversed her conviction and it's going back for a new trial. So that came out in the middle of the night, and there were so many of you who were commenting on it, like thinking it was live. It was very funny and very cute. And I rarely do that because the editing just takes forever. But it was fun. You thought it was AI? Team Brittany thought it was AI. Well, my friends, everyone having a good couple of days and stuff and things, and trying to distract from all of the other nonsense that's going on in the world of nonsense. I have the most exciting guest for you today. And you've asked for her to come on the show for so long that it's so exciting. So I just want to give people a couple minutes to come in. Because if anyone can help me break down the noise and the garbage and the gaslighting that's still going on Twitter, it is our girl, Olivia Lambo. Everyone welcome Olivia Lambo. Woo, woo.
Hello.
Hi, Olivia. Hi, Olivia. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Happy holiday. Well, Merry Christmas, happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy we're finally doing this.
I know. We've been talking about this for so long, and it's just we have such crazy schedules that we never had the opportunity to do it. But I feel like we have, but I guess we haven't. It's been like almost a year. People are like, who's Olivia? Olivia is Olivia Lambo on Twitter. She's what I call a tweetheart. She's one of the only people that I know who knows this case as well as I do the Karen Reed case. So for those who may not know who you are, introduce yourself to the people and the viewers and let them know a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. You may know me I'm always in Melanie's chat. So if you've seen Olivia Nile before, that's me. And yeah, Melanie and I just connected through both of our shared interest in the case. And I mostly live on Twitter, unfortunately.
And I don't. So a lot of people don't. Yeah. So there might be some people who don't know you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame anyone because it can get pretty toxic over there. As you as you've discussed before. But yeah, so I try to do posts on the case that focus on the documents and, what can be derived from directly from the court filings and the evidence and all that good stuff.
And you're wicked smart, and you're wicked smart, and you understand the technology, which is something that I struggle with. So I love that you're able to explain the technology and the key cycles and the phone records and the Celebrite data in a way that people can understand it. See, look, people read all your tweets, but there's a Billy Tibbetts, or actually William and Tibbetts. Billy Tibbetts is a total sub. Free Billy Tibbetts.
Oh my God,
Free
that
my
was so
boy.
funny.
Marvin says, will a wealthy free Karen Reed person donate $5,000 to the Karen Reed Fund if Olivia shows her face? I don't know. Maybe we could auction that off. Listen, I
Oh
don't
my
blame you for
gosh.
wanting to stay anonymous, because I was on Twitter for like 5 minutes and they came after me so hard just for reporting on this case. That started
Oh
about a year
yeah.
ago, and I never even used Twitter, and I had like 4 followers, and I was like, you know what? I don't need this. I'm out. There's so
Yeah.
much stuff for us to break down, but before we do that, check this out, you guys. Check this out. And this is real. You might have thought my title for the stream today was fake, but this is Boston.com, which is, I think it's associated with the Boston Globe.
Yeah,
And
I
here's
think
the
so.
article that came out on, was it Christmas Day or the day after Christmas? It was yesterday, 5 a.m. Boston.com readers were obsessed with these stories in 2024. Here's why. And then it says Karen Reed, campus protest, the Celtics, and several other stories bubbled to the top this year. And out of all of these stories, my friends, you might not be too shocked to know that Karen Reed was number 1. Check it out. The people, or at least the people who make up Boston.com's readership, have spoken. A lot of news happened in 2024, but these are the stories that readers cited as the ones that most intrigued them over the course of the last 12 months. In total, readers sent more than 500 responses to our survey. I mean, that doesn't really seem like a lot of responses, but I'll allow it. You'll find a countdown of the 5 they mentioned most often, followed by 6 more that bubbled up just underneath. And how much do you want to bet at least a few of these turn up on the list again next year? So number
Mm.
5 in the top 5, Massachusetts gets part of the eclipse. That was only 7% of the voters found that they thought, well, no, that's not going to work. And then they talk a little bit about the eclipse and the silly glasses that everyone wore. And yeah, I don't know. I looked at the eclipse. Did you? I went to
Yeah,
my,
wasn't
my
that
daughter's
when it
school.
was like there was that period during the night where it was just uncharacteristically light out,
Hmm.
like a full moon times 10.
Right. I don't even remember when that was, but I remember going to my daughter's school and we had those crazy glasses. And it was, I guess it was sometime like around 3 in the afternoon that I was looking at it, but it's kind of cloudy that day,
Or
as I
wait, maybe
recall.
was it during the day? Was it the opposite of what I said? Maybe it was during the day and it got really dark. That
That's
might
what it
have been it.
was. That's
Yeah.
what it was. Yeah.
I
It looks
clearly
like,
don't remember it very well.
see what I mean? No wonder it was only at number 5. I'm surprised it even made the top 5, quite honestly. Number 4 was the pro-Palestinian protests on campus. And there's a lot of colleges in the greater Boston area. So again, that only made number 4 on the list, with only 11% of people voting for that as the story they were most obsessed with in 2024. Then Bill Belichick saying bye-bye was only at 13%, came in at number 3 on the list, which should have probably been a way bigger story for all the
Hmm.
Patriots fans, wouldn't you
I mean,
think?
that's like the end of an era. That's a huge
I
story.
know. I
And
Here's what they say. One of 2 sports stories to make our top 5. A sizable number of readers pointed to the departure of Bill Belichick from the Patriots team he had led to 6 Super Bowl championships. Even though it happened way back in
amazing.
early January, readers reported his leaving as having taken up big chunks of their sports headspace throughout 2024, maybe because he kept making headlines, whether it was his opinions about the team he left behind, reports about his love life, couple's Halloween costume, anyone?
Oh my
Or his eventual
gosh.
landing as coach at North Carolina. I don't know anything about. Listen, you're local to Massachusetts. I have ties to Norfolk, Massachusetts, which is why I got involved in this case. So I don't know. I don't know anything about his Halloween costume.
I don't know what that's referring to specifically, but if I had to guess, it's probably referring to his new girlfriend who is, I want to say she's like 24 years old or something.
Oh,
And yeah, that people have a lot to say about about that pairing. So I'm guessing that's what it's about.
that's interesting.
Um yeah. Yeah, I think I was actually looking into this the other day because I was so shocked when I saw a picture of the two of them together, and I was looking at his Wikipedia to see how old his kids are, and they're all older than his current girlfriend. So
Wow.
that's probably an awkward dinner table conversation.
Right. I wonder if she's accepted into the fam.
Yeah.
Must have been a fun Christmas. But in any event, the Celtics becoming national champions was only at number 2 on this
Wow.
list, with 19% of the vote. While they might not have had the juice of our omnipresent number 1 story mentioned below, readers named our Boston Celtics the second most intriguing story of the year, with their decisive championship victory over the Dallas Mavericks in June, dispelling any doubt that this was arguably by far the best team in the NBA. It almost makes you feel bad for all those other teams that didn't have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, a roster of stellar complementary players, and coach Joe Mazzulla. How do you pronounce his name? Joe Mazzulla? I don't know. Churning out quotes of the day like an internet era Yogi Berra. Oh, and their parade was pretty good too. Well, when's the last time the Celtics won a national championship?
Oh gosh.
Somebody in the chat must know. I mean, I'm sure it's been a while. I mean, can you believe that Karen Reed is topping out over the Celtics and the Patriots? That just blows my mind. So
I
here
know,
it
I was
is.
gonna say, I feel like that the Karen Reed case is like the only piece of news that I've been following for the past year.
I feel like it's you and perhaps every other person in Massachusetts, right?
Apparently.
The Karen Reed saga coming in at number 1 with 28% of the vote. In a year that saw the continuation of more than a few disturbing ongoing murder stories, the Brian Walsh and Lindsay Clancy cases come to mind. One captured people's attention the most by far. The trial of Karen Reed made headlines and spurred water cooler talk far beyond Boston, leading to the logical assumption among basically everybody that it would eventually be a Netflix documentary, which of course it will be, they say. As you'll probably recall, prosecutors allege that Reed was driving drunk and deliberately backed her SUV into her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, while dropping him off at a house party in January of 2022. And Reed's lawyers allege that O'Keefe was actually beaten by people inside the house and attacked by the family dog. It's a case that has everything, including a turtle boy. And since her first trial ended in a mistrial, we'll get to do it all again next April.
Mm,
Oh, yes, we
joy.
will. Who's doing, I don't know who's doing the Netflix documentary. Has that been confirmed? Because I
I was
know, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm guessing it has. I was actually contacted by a woman from what the heck is they have it's like a smaller studio that is under Netflix. I think Sandpaper maybe or something like that, who's producing it. And
I don't know if, because I think there are a
I've
couple
heard
going
it's
on at the same time. And I think I
yeah.
was contacted by them as well. I declined, but
Yeah, me too. Me too.
you too?
Yeah.
I was like, how's this going to help me exactly? And then you're going to edit me to say whatever you want me to say. And then it's going to
Right.
turn out like a Phelps production. Like, no, thanks.
Oh my gosh, I know. Well, but yeah, especially after how that went, it's like,
I had a feeling
yeah.
that they do like stuff with the Discovery ID. So, I mean, I think there could be 3 things going on because Kate Peter did go on some show and say that the McCabe's and the Alberts have a deal with another company, and that's why they were not allowed to talk to Phelps because they had some sort of exclusive deal. So I don't know.
That's why they were not allowed to talk. Is that why they haven't spoken to any media or answered any reporters' questions outside of the courthouse during the pretrial hearings when there was nobody approaching them about documentaries? I mean, why haven't they given any interviews, or do they refuse to answer questions not through their lawyer?
Exactly. Well, that's why, because I mean, Kay Peters said it on somebody's show, and I don't remember whose show it was, but said that the reason, maybe it was when she went on JFK. Did you watch that when she called into JFK one night randomly? And she said,
I think I heard about it. I don't know. I don't know if I listened to it though. I'm sure I heard like a clip of it somewhere or something.
I think she said that the reason that they couldn't talk and that they couldn't appear on the podcast with Phelps is because they had an exclusive deal with another company.
Interesting.
And so the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, well, if Judge Canoni is going to allow discovery of all of the off the record notes and cutting room
Mm-hmm.
floor excerpts of, the Boston Magazine and Ted Daniels interviews, that stuff could be fair game too. Just
Yeah, but
saying.
I bet you none of the off the record interviews or behind the scenes discussions with any of them will be without their lawyer present.
You would think if they were smart. I don't know. There's a lot of people complaining they can't hear anything. You need to maybe refresh your browser.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
No, not you, Olivia. No,
Oh,
it's people in the chat. I
people
mean,
in the
I heard
chat.
one or two people say it was breaking up, but YouTube has been like acting up lately. So if you are listening and you can't hear, then maybe refresh your browser. Try that. Sounds great. Thank you. Thanks, Sherry. Oh, no, I didn't say Siri. Hold on, nothing popped up. And then there are some honorable mentions here, which is interesting because it was like Trump making headway in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts migrant crisis, crime in downtown Boston, ballot questions, the arrest of Tanya Fernandez Anderson. I mean, you'd think that all of these things would be more
I mean,
newsworthy.
the election is pretty significant, and especially the way that Massachusetts voted this election. I mean, it was shocking. Like it was staggering compared to how the political makeup of the state normally. So that's definitely a big story, in my opinion.
I would think so too. I've just turned Olivia's mic up on my end. So tell me, you said she was lower than I am. So hopefully I fixed it. I'm getting good at this technology stuff. And then here, as an honorable mention, this is really interesting. State police troubles. As if the classless texts from State Trooper Michael Proctor revealed during the Reed trial weren't enough, the mysterious training death of recruit Enrique Delgado Garcia cast a further pall over the organization, plus all the fraud. Not that your run-of-the-mill municipal police departments got off easy either. Case in point, the Sandra Birchmore case in Stoughton.
It's just
Interesting.
speaking of the Enrique Delgado Garcia story, I mean, it's unbelievable to me that there's no update. We've heard nothing. I mean, if it was caught on camera and it's so straightforward, like it's being made out to be, why is there no resolution? It's been months.
It's been months. It's been a long time. And there's a lot of witnesses.
Right.
It seems like there's no good
Maybe
reason.
there's more to the story.
Isn't there always?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there always more to the story? The state police want us all to forget about Enrique, says Emmy. Thanks, Lisa. What a treat. Melanie and Mods, what a treat. Thanks, Lisa, for hanging around and Joseph, thanks for gifting 5 memberships. You're amazing. 6 memberships, 7 memberships, and to the 7 people who are randomly gifted, welcome. That is awesome. So for those of you who are on the cesspool of Twitter, hi, Chris Draper. Thanks for becoming a member. And Justin Green also for your Cash App before it even started the show. I'm not on there, as you know, but people tell me about it, much to my dismay. And you're on there, so you know firsthand. But there are people posting about the Karen Read case literally 10, 12, 15 times a day.
Oh yeah.
like it's their job. And the gaslighting is still going on. It's still real. And I thought when I found these, somebody sent me these rumors that were posted today earlier. And so I reached out to you and I'm like, hey, do you want to come and dispel these rumors with me? Because who better to dispel these rumors with me than you? What do you say?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And for those of you in the chat, you can also chime in because these are just a few of the things that the people who hate Karen Reed so much that they just want to tweet about her 10, 15, 20 times a day as if it's their job are talking about out there in the cesspool.
But I thought that we were paid by Karen.
Well, I haven't received any checks yet. Have you?
No, but I mean, if we were paid by Karen, we must be awful employees because we don't post about or do live streams about her case 24/7.
I know. I think I talk about other topics too, which is just so crazy. I'm really bad at my job. Um, and then also, I mean, these people, a lot of them are self-proclaimed best friends of Jennifer McCabe and Matt McCabe and other people involved in this case, or perhaps the wives of some of the troopers. I don't even know. I think a lot of them have like 10 to 15 fake accounts that they also post on. Oh, right. And they also hate Aiden. Exactly. That's
Mm.
true. We forgot about that.
It's almost like if they're friends and family of the third party culprits, it's almost like they might be biased.
Do you think? I don't
Just a
know.
little.
I mean, I came to my conclusions and my, informed opinion about this case from looking at every single police report and document and investigative report and court filing and motion and watching hearings and watching the whole trial. That's how I came to my conclusions. How about you?
God forbid.
How about
Do you
you?
do you remember back in the day when people would on Twitter, I mostly saw this, people would accuse like anyone who was posting about the case and posting court documents, they'd accuse us like of saying that's illegal. Like
Yeah.
how did you get those court documents that
Yep.
are public?
Yep. Yep. This is really funny. I mean, because I was going to ask you about this, Olivia, if you have heard about what's going on with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, because Emmy says the
Insane.
McAlberts hired the same PR firm as Justin Baldoni. Like they had an orchestrated plan of what to do to ruin Blake Lively and where to plant these stories and how to hire bots with keywords who would go in and make crazy comments to trash her and
Hmm.
to destroy her. And I mean, coincidentally, same PR firm that was hired by Johnny Depp. Let's not even go there. But isn't it interesting how people were accusing us of being paid PR
Right.
people when something like this really was going on in the Blake Lively case? I had no idea that this goes on. I mean, maybe I'm just naive, but
I mean,
how did these people know that it goes on?
I've known that, like there's bots and like bot farming and all that sort of stuff, but I mean, to see behind the curtain of how PR teams in Hollywood do this and how it like seems based on the text messages in that complaint from Blake Lively.
Mhm.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it's particularly difficult to drum up, that kind of narrative on social media like
Mhm.
they did. And um it's funny you say that because I was thinking the other day, I've been following that story. That story is crazy.
It's getting
And
crazier. Yeah.
oh, I know when his what's her name? Jones, his PR firm came out with her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni. I mean, talk about an intense Christmas
Mhm.
for his family. But um what I thought about is how that what I loved about the complaint is you can just see firsthand the text messages, the digital footprint, the digital evidence, and
Mhm.
yet you still have so many people who are like denying the reality of what happened. They're denying the digital evidence, they're denying the text messages, and I'm like, wow, where else do we see this, where you can have the firsthand evidence in a court document where you can see it for yourself,
Right.
and people still just deny that reality and the gaslighting of it all.
It is. It's very similar. And Cameron says that's what PR firms literally do. But no, usually PR firms are not hired to destroy other people. They're hired to pump up their own clients. So, I
Yeah,
mean, what they did
I
was,
would imagine.
yeah, was not something that PR firms are typically hired to do. And I think that their text messages are going to sink them because, in fact, one of the girls, I forget which one, came out and said, "Oh, well, we just had those plans in place, but, we didn't actually execute on them."
Oh, please.
Yeah, that's exactly what she said. So here are some of the rumors that they think are rumors, actually, the antis, who are, I don't even know why they're posting this stuff. But again, it's Christmas and I guess they have nothing else to do. Rumor number one, why didn't Brian Albert come out of the house? Brian and his wife were sound asleep and didn't wake up until Jen McCabe entered their bedroom. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, first of all, they have a highly reactive dog, German
Mm-hmm.
Shepherd, and anybody who has a dog knows that if they like if there's a car that pulls into the I mean, most dogs react when somebody is like pulling into the driveway or outside of your house, let alone multiple emergency vehicles with their full lights on and who knows what sound. I mean, even if they didn't have sirens on, those are, you've got the ambulance. I think there's a fire truck, at least one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not quiet vehicles. And so that's curious. I mean,
And also,
was
if you're a police
Chloe
officer, right? You're a police officer, like you're trained to like have like this sixth sense of like things going on. Aren't you kind of always on alert?
right? Well, yeah, it's not only that, but it's like as a police officer or an investigator, a detective, aren't you just naturally inquisitive?
You would think. But I mean, the fact that their story is going to be that they just were sound asleep and they didn't wake up until Jen McCabe entered their bedroom when, for example, here are the phone records because, we have receipts.
Mm-hmm.
You like receipts. So let's look at the phone records of Jen McCabe because they're out there. And here they are, right here in black and white. She calls her sister. This is the morning.
6:07 and 6:08 a.m.
And
Eight
there it
seconds
is.
each, I think. Or one of them's 7 seconds, one of them is 8 seconds.
Oh, yep, 6:07 and 6:08. And those were outgoing to Coco, 6:07, 6:08. And one is 9 seconds and one is 7 seconds.
It's almost as if the investigators in this case had collected everybody's cell phones, including Brian Albert and Nicole Alberts, they could have seen things on them, like if they were up and moving around and taking steps, like going over to the window, or if they even lifted their phone off the bedside table. You can see things like that on an iPhone,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm sure they would just say that was actually them driving in a car flailing their arms around.
And that's like laughable though, isn't it? Jen says,
Crazy.
oopsie, Jen was caught on body cam footage on the rookie's body cam. Las Vegas cops go over it. Yeah, wasn't she caught like sneaking into the house or like doing
Yeah,
like the
she
little Pink Panther thing towards the front door?
yeah, so it's not body cam footage, but it's on the dash cam footage from the Canton PD dash cams, and shows her like slipping along the side of the house to sneak into the house. And the other thing that I find really interesting is that it's like less than a minute after Karen and Carrie Roberts and Karen Reed leave the scene is when the lights turn on in the house, and it's like, oh, okay, conveniently now they are allegedly awake or whatever.
Right. And somebody testified first of all that Chloe was sleeping in the bedroom, right?
Yes.
Um, it's hard to remember who testified. Maybe you can do better than
Brian
I can at this
Albert,
point.
so Brian Albert, I think Brian and Nicole Albert both did. And I seem to remember when pressed on the issue of, well, why didn't Chloe, alert or respond, I think Brian Albert then went on to say that, well, she may have been sleeping in the closet,
Right.
which was interesting.
And nobody mentions a dog being in the house when they came in to do their interviews.
Right. And I mean, wasn't that one of the things with Chloe, that she barked a lot?
Yeah. And wasn't good with strangers.
Right.
I wanted to ask you about this too, because, well, is this the Celebrate extraction that we're looking at here?
I believe that's a call log that was, yeah, obtained from the Celebrate extraction.
Okay.
Because
So,
the defense had that before they got the Verizon records, so that's not like from the call detail records or anything.
okay. So, and all of these calls were deleted that are highlighted in yellow.
Yes.
But it clearly says that these 2 phone calls that she makes to Nicole, who she calls Coco in her phone, were
Were answered.
outgoing and answered. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how I thought, remember Lally? The phone doesn't lie. The phone
Right.
doesn't lie. What's in the phone? It doesn't lie. 9 seconds and 7 seconds, she answered it. Maybe Coco was telling the truth on the stand when she says, I did not answer the call. Maybe Brian did.
Well, so the other thing that stands out to me about the data for those 2 calls is that um the fact that, like, the duration for each call is also different from one another.
Hmm.
Um Especially after Adam Lally in one of the pretrial hearings tried to make the argument that, oh no, that's just how it shows up when a call goes to voicemail or something like that. Um, as if Celebrite's not able to discern between the two, but it kind of like he was essentially asserting that it will show up as an answered call with a set duration when it goes to voicemail. But that doesn't work because the duration is different for both calls, which would only happen if you're speaking on the phone with somebody and you hang up and then you have another conversation.
Right. Exactly. Then yeah, then they would both be the exact same amount of
I
time.
mean, it also just wouldn't show as answered either. So,
Right. Because some of these are rejected, not answered, missed.
and it's like, if that's the case, then what good is any of this as evidence, you know?
How many
Like, if it's that
defendants are going to be banging on the
unreliable,
jailhouse doors like, let me out because you convicted me on this stuff and now you're saying it's not accurate?
right? And that seems to be just a constant theme throughout. Ignore all the digital evidence.
Right. It's accurate for some people, but not for other people. Look
Hmm.
at Karen's cell phone data. That's all accurate because she called her parents or she called her mom at 1 something a.m. and her mom didn't answer. Then she called her dad at 6 something a.m. and that means she's guilty.
Hmm.
But don't look at Jen McCabe's phone records because it's not accurate.
Well, yeah,
I wanted to ask you this too, because I've been wondering about who is Tom Beatty and why does Jen McCabe call him 1, 2, 3 times before 6 a.m.? She calls him at 5:33, 5:52, and 5:57.
so that is somebody who lives in town who is one of John O'Keefe's friends, and Jen McCabe claims in her interviews that when she was first contacted by Karen in the morning, that she then called around to see if maybe John went to a friend's house and spent the night at a friend's house. Um, People believe that the reason why Jen McCabe called Tom Beatty, though, is because something having to do with Colin Albert contacting Tom Beatty's daughter, Erin Beatty, the night before when he was at 34 Fairview. And it was, I guess, the suggestion is that it was an attempt by Jen McCabe to see, what, if anything, Tom Beatty knew.
Right, right.
Um, but the thing that is interesting about that, I actually did a post on this a while back, is Jen says in her interviews that she called around, some friends or people that she thought John could have gone over to, John, like who people's houses John could have gone over to. And then she says in her interview that, but John was not at any of those places. Like John wasn't there. But how, if you look at the calls to Tom Beatty,
Hmm.
I think there's one that was answered for like a second or something, but the
Yeah.
other one isn't answered. And then Jen, she doesn't actually speak to Tom Beatty until I think it's like in the early afternoon that day. If you scroll down, it
Well, let's see.
shows that they
We
actually
have not answered and not answered. Those were the ones that were
in the morning
5:33 and
nearly
5:52. But then there's this one that's answered at
for like a
5:57,
second.
and that's like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
2 seconds, yeah. And then down here, there's an incoming that she misses from him.
And I
That was
think
at
there might be another
8:50.
one later.
And then here's one incoming that was answered 1:31.
1:30. There you go.
And that was like, I think that's 3 minutes and 14 seconds, I think.
Yeah. So the first time that like there would have been enough time for them to have an actual conversation would have been that call at like 1:30 in the afternoon. So my question was, how did she know if Jen McCabe didn't know where John O'Keefe was that morning when she was first contacted by Karen Reed, and she didn't actually connect, like she didn't actually speak with Tom Beatty, because 2 seconds is not long enough to actually have a conversation with someone about, what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Then how did Jen McCabe know that John wasn't at Tom Beatty's house?
Right.
Because she told the people interviewing her, that she called around to see if John could have been at anybody's houses, but he wasn't there. And so if you don't know where John is, then how do you know where he's not? Like when you haven't even spoken to that person.
Didn't she say she also called Julie Albert to see if he went home with Chris?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too.
I don't see any
In
calls to Julie Albert.
and in I so that may be something that appears on the Verizon records, because the other thing you have to remember is this data here, this call log, this was obtained from the cell phone extraction itself, the
Mm-hmm.
Celebrite basically. And while Celebrite um can find, deleted items and things, it can't recover everything. And so there's calls prior to when the defense got access to her Verizon records. There's information that they don't know that they have the full picture, because people can obviously go in and delete stuff on their phones, and there's a lot of evidence of Jem McCabe doing that in this case. So that's why in normal investigations, criminal investigations, that's why it's just kind of SOP for law enforcement to not only do the physical extraction from the cell phone itself, but then they also get the third party cell phone records or the call detail records, because it's a way of corroborating somebody. It's a way of seeing, is this person lying to me? Are they deleting stuff on their phone? And it just is more credible and reliable in court. But they didn't do that in this case.
No, they didn't. And then if you look here too, I thought here's a couple of incoming calls from an unknown number that was not in her phone. This 781 number calls a lot. And then there's this 339 number. But then I noticed, because I just noticed this for the first time when I saw this the other day, Ashley Bella's mom. She calls Ashley Bella's mom.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Ashley got
Yep.
dragged into this case. And that call was answered. That was at 1:04 in the afternoon. And that was
Mm-hmm.
a 12-minute and 43-second call.
Yeah, well, a lot of people who've been following this case and looking into the details and stuff say that Jem McCabe was awfully busy that day getting the narrative around town and calling anybody who might who might be a potential problem for that narrative, like hence Tom Beatty and um Ashley Bella. So Ashley Bella mom, I believe, is referring to the woman who John previously dated, who lived
Right.
not far from 34 Fairview.
The one that she was giving directions and said, "Oh, go past
Past
Ashley's
where
house."
yeah,
And she's saying
exactly.
that's why there was this big fight in the car.
Right. So I mean, it's very interesting that she calls. I mean, what did they talk about for 12 minutes?
I don't
I'd
know.
be curious to know.
She called her for 12 minutes. And why did nobody ever? She must have been interviewed. And then there's an incoming call from her that's rejected, and that's at 1:26. And if it has Ashley Bella's mom in there, that indicates to me that she's not really great friends with Ashley, because she wouldn't need to know that it's Bella's mom to be, if she was friends with Ashley, right? It would just be like
Right.
Ashley so and
Her
so.
name. Right.
Yeah, which I think is kind of bizarre. Um, I'm sure she did not want to be dragged into this case,
Oh yeah,
and
I'm sure.
she was never called to the stand. I don't know if she was
I
ever
think,
interviewed, but this is interesting stuff in this call log that people forget about when they post their rumors on Twitter.
well, you know what else is interesting, especially when applying Hank Brennan's arguments, when he filed those Rule 17 motions seeking Karen Reed's parents' cell phone records. His whole argument was that she called them at these times in the night, which wasn't even accurate, and had discussions with her parents. We want to see the whole prior month of their call records to establish whether or not that was an anomaly.
Hmm.
And 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 he said, and if it is in fact an anomaly, the inference can be that it's consciousness of guilt evidence, basically, or it's suspicious at the very least. And it's like, okay, well, if we were to apply that same logic to Jem McCabe's records, um how many times did Jem McCabe call Carrie Roberts before this day? Because she's called her 15 times on the 29th, and I don't even think that she had her phone number before this day. So if you
Right.
want to infer guilt or suspicion, and there's so many examples of that with Jem McCabe's phone records, or how about we look at, the two Brians, Brian Albert and Brian Higgins phone records, and see how many times did they butt dial each other at 2:22 in the morning? Is
Right.
that an anomaly or is that a regular occurrence?
Before this, exactly.
And
Exactly.
and how many times did Jem McCabe call? This is the other thing. People say Karen Reed called John O'Keefe so many times that night. Well, did you see how many times Jem McCabe called John O'Keefe that night?
Yeah.
And does she normally do that?
Like 16 times. Was it something like 16 times?
I don't remember the exact number, but it
It was
was
something
it
like
was in
that.
the double digits. It was a lot.
I remember from the testimony that Carrie Roberts and Jen McCabe had only met once before, and that's when John took them to buy them sneakers, or buy their kids
Oh
sneakers.
yeah, Reebok or New Balance or
Was
something.
it Reebok or New Balance or Nike? I can't remember now. At a sneaker place, because he got some discount, and they went to, like, it was like they went to somewhere for lunch. Like it was CF McCarthy's or the Waterfall or somewhere for lunch. That was the only time they had ever met before this day, which was bizarre. And now she's got her on speed dial.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate that story though about John? I mean, like, how adorable is that he is taking people, like, to get their kids sneakers? I just love that.
It's really
Like, was that a
nice.
tradition of his? Because it kind of sounds like one.
Yeah. I mean, because, like, think about it. He's like a single dad, right? And being before he met Karen, and he probably has no idea, right, how to raise these children. And it takes a village sometimes, when you
Mm-hmm.
are a single dad like that, especially and you're working. And he worked a lot, and he needed help getting them places. And there were a lot of, I'm sure, moms in the neighborhood that really helped him out. And that was his way of
Yeah,
thanking them. And that was really a kind thing to do.
it's so sweet. And
Yeah,
it's just so random, but it's so endearing. I love that.
I know. But yeah, they had only met that one time before. Um, no one else in the neighborhood came outside. I mean, is that a good argument for why Brian Albert didn't? Because nobody else did. Nobody else did either. So it doesn't really matter that he didn't.
I
Um,
mean, well, first of all, where's the proof of that
right.
nobody else did?
Hmm.
But also, the emergency vehicles weren't in everybody else's front yard. They were in Brian Albert's front yard. There were people in his front yard screaming.
Screaming. You could hear Karen screaming bloody murder on that recording from when she dropped her phone in the back seat, and she was far away from the car. She was further away
Yeah,
from that car than she was from Brian Albert's window. I'll tell you that much. I
I
haven't
think
driven by the
literally
house, but people say that the yard is a lot smaller than it seems.
yeah, that's what I've heard. And I mean, I think like literally every witness testified to the fact that Karen Reed was like screaming, hysterical and screaming.
Yeah.
Um, you know what else I find very curious is the moment that the decision was made. Well, first of all, it's just weird. It's bizarre that Jen McCabe had them go back to John's house to look for him when Karen Reed left the house to look for him because he didn't come home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even more weird when you realize the fact that Jen had John O'Keefe's niece's phone number in her phone from when they just called her. Um, I mean, that's why Karen went to go wake up the niece. Why didn't she call her if she actually believed John could have been at the house to ask her instead of wasting time physically going there? But then once they've already looked at his house and the decision was made to go to 34 Fairview, wouldn't any person be on their phone just calling their sister, calling their brother-in-law, calling their house phone number, calling their nephew, Brian Albert Jr., anybody's phone numbers who live there,
Mm-hmm.
because you're looking for a person and you're aware that there's this blizzard, it's freezing outside. So like obviously if that person's outside at all and not answering their phone, the circumstances are dire. You don't want to waste time driving somewhere where you could call someone who that lives there and be like, "Hey, do you have any idea where John is? Have you seen him at all? Like, did he come back to your house?"
It strains credulity. The whole thing strains credulity. And that's what I've been saying since the beginning about this case. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be a technological wizard. All you need is common sense. It's common sense, right?
Right.
They're saying
And
there a lot of people are pointing out that the neighbors took pictures of all the emergency
right.
vehicles.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, the direct next door neighbors took pictures showing the light, just how bright and dramatic the scene was, the how bright the lights were and how dramatic the scene was. um so yes, like you love to say, it strains credulity.
It's mind-numbing. And then again, didn't Tom Kelleher come out to give them some solo cups? Or did they just
Yeah,
go in his garage and get them? Because for those of you who don't know, Tom Kelleher, who was I think he was the acting chief of police of Canton, lived right across the street from 34 Fairview. That's where they got the solo cups.
we need more info on the circumstances surrounding the whole Tom Kelleher of it all, because like what happened with I mean, police officers responding to a crime scene, one of the first things that they do, as we saw in the Luigi Mangione case, is they canvass for surveillance footage.
Mm-hmm.
And there it's like there's rumors about what happened in regards to Tom Kelleher's Ring camera, but there's nothing confirmed or notated in any of the court documents about it. So like what really happened there?
Right. I mean, the story was initially, I think, that he said there was nothing interesting on it. And that was just, they left it at that.
And can you imagine if police officers took people's word for when they're canvassing for surveillance footage. Oh, this person
Mhm.
says there's nothing it's like, yeah, that would also be something that somebody who could have potentially been involved would say. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, you just you grab the footage, or you at least go and look at it yourself.
How about the footage from every single house she drove by on her way out of the neighborhood, which would have
That
shown
too.
that her taillight was shattered, which is what they want everyone to
Exactly.
believe. Nothing to see here. Right. Nothing to
Well,
see here.
not only that, but um you know how they got surveillance footage from the Canton Library and the temple, um these places that were along her drive from the bar to 34 Fairview to, like, see, okay, so she at 12:15 passes the Canton Public Library, and at 12:17 passes the B'nai Tikva temple. I don't know if that's how it's called, but the temple.
Hmm.
Um and then they also get surveillance footage in the morning when she's going out to search for John from those same locations
Hmm.
to establish, where she is. Why didn't they get, well, we know that they lost the library surveillance footage from the most critical time period when she's driving home after allegedly shattering her taillight from striking John O'Keefe.
Hmm.
They magically lost that library surveillance footage. But why did they not grab the temple surveillance footage from that same time? People overlook that fact so much, and it, to me, that like almost confirms that it was deliberate. They didn't lose the library surveillance footage for the critical time period. Like, that was deliberately, gotten rid of, or whatever the case may be, because they also avoided getting the surveillance footage that they'd grabbed for all of the other insignificant times.
Hmm. Right.
But they avoided getting the temple surveillance footage for Karen Reed's drive home.
Yeah. Yeah. The library footage missing is absurd. It says decorated dude, decorated dude. I mean, now it's turning out like that the 2 minutes of missing footage, I think I saw somewhere in passing, would have been after the time that she had connected back to the One Meadows Wi-Fi.
Yeah, which is interesting. And I've actually, from early on, suspected that the footage from, I believe it was between 12:37 and 12:39 a.m. that was just missing. I actually suspect that that is footage showing something else. Not that it's footage that was showing Karen Reed going home, but that
Mhm.
maybe it was showing somebody else who was going home. Because, and the other thing I'll just mention really quickly is that uh the Alberts, Chris Albert and Julie Albert, they lived right behind the Canton Public Library,
Right,
22 Maple.
right. And we can point out here because a lot of people I saw were screaming this out before, and I didn't address it yet because I was going to get to it, is that in the initial statements to police, Chris and Julie Albert stated that they followed from the
Yeah.
waterfall back to 34 Fairview. I mean, it's
Right.
I forget if it was Proctor or Buchanan who wrote that witness statement, however many months later, but they said clearly, we followed back to 34 Fairview.
Right. And they
Nobody ever
also
made a big
said,
deal about it, but except for me and you screaming into a closet.
oh yeah, I know. And it also, in that same interview, Julie Albert says that she found out John was dead at 4:55 a.m. from
That's
a,
right.
a call from Jem McCabe.
That's right.
But we're crazy for pointing these facts out, because apparently none of them, oh no, there's an explanation for that. None of that's reliable, and also all the digital evidence isn't reliable. You can't look at that. It's like, look the other way.
Look the other way, and the data sometimes works, but most of the time it
Sometimes.
doesn't. And remind me, because I want to get back to you about the GPS on John's phone never going in the house. So just put a pin in that.
Hmm.
Thank you, Sarah and Chaganhara, for gifting 5 memberships. I love you and appreciate you so much. And DJ, shout out to the legend Olivia. Thanks for the 5. Glamasu says, thanks for the 5. Colin called Erin Beatty, Tom's daughter, to get a ride home that night. The McAlberts have harassed the Beatty family ever since. You know, I
Yes.
have been saying that for a long time, that these, first of all, how those screenshotted messages of Colin and Allie ever got admitted into evidence is beyond any stretch of my imagination that I could, I have a stress ball right here. It is bigger than I could ever stretch this thing. How that was ever authenticated and allowed into evidence, I have no idea. It was like screenshots that were doctored. I don't even know. But my thought has always been that when he said, you can come and get me now, and she's like, I can't come right now, I got to do something else. He's like, all right, whenever. That's when she went to pick him up to bring him to 34 Fairview. And that
well,
somebody else, because that was like around 12:10 or something.
and
that perhaps someone else picked him up. So I don't know if that's where Erin
I've
Beatty comes
questioned
in.
that too, because yeah, I mean it's definitely a possibility. But what is definitive is that Allie McCabe's her GPS data, her Life 360 GPS data, does not corroborate her story or the Commonwealth's theory, which requires her story to be accurate. So
What was the
and
whole weird story about her picking up a stray dog and bringing it to the police? What was the point of that? I'm very confused by that. Can you shed some light on that for me? Anyone Bueller? Because I have no idea why she was asked about it. I have no idea why it ever came up. Look, what, if anything, was relevant about that story?
right, there's so many little the sprinklings of little stories like that throughout the testimony that it it was so perplexing, and I try to figure out what could the meaning be, like it's either that there's something that they are aware of that they're trying to get ahead of to protect, because they're very well aware of the fact that the feds had been and still are investigating. And and so it's either like they tell these stories that nobody else knows the reason why they're even telling it, because they're trying to get ahead of something else, or some other explanations I've thought of that, like as it relates to the dog story is, and I mean, I know it sounds kind of absurd, but like I wouldn't put it past the DA's office and these people, is they could be doing things like that. Well, actually, I guess this isn't the best example, but maybe they're doing it to try to kind of bolster that witness's credibility. Um, like there were other stories that people told that you heard more than one witness tell that same story, but you couldn't really understand why it was relevant. And it's like maybe they were just trying to do that to show consistency throughout the
Wow.
testimony to like bolster the witness's credibility. Um, that's certainly a possibility. I mean, I've heard people speculate that the dog story could be because Allie McCabe took Chloe Albert home, and it's to potentially explain for like why there might be dog fur or dog, like dog hair or something in the car. I don't know. I mean,
But was the stray dog story the day of the
it was that night
29th
when
or
she
the
was driving
28th?
around with it was the 28th when she was driving around with her friends, before like she allegedly drove Colin Albert to the house or picked him up.
Interesting. Little Har Oak says, yes, Yannetti asked Allie if there would be footage of her driving in a certain direction. That's why the footage went missing, in my opinion, because Team Brittany, the path of travel is way off, right? I don't know. A lot of people think the dog was Chloe. I don't know. It's just so confused by that story. A lot of people think, well, they should have tell a different story so that all of their testimony didn't sound too similar. People are saying an alibi for taking Chloe away from the house. Yeah, except for that it happened before. It happened earlier in the day of the 28th,
Well, it
allegedly.
could be an alibi in the sense that, like, if there's evidence of, I guess, like, if there's evidence of a dog being present in Allie's car after all this, it's to
Hmm.
explain that away. But, like, I don't know that that makes total sense, because that the feds can easily surveil these people through digital footprints, but, like, physically accessing her car is not something they can really covertly do. So, um, I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean, it
it's
could
just
also
weird.
be, it could be something where they're like trying to bolster her credibility, because it's something that, I guess, like, the feds could obtain surveillance footage from the Canton Police Department that night to see, did she in fact go there like she's claiming to, and
And
it
wouldn't there
shows
be a
that she
report of
did.
it? There would have to be a log entry of it somewhere. Because I think in her story she even said something like, "Oh yeah, and then they told me who the lady was and I drove the dog to the lady's house."
Yeah, the whole story is bizarre. They asked her to, like, drop the dog off at the lady's like, the whole thing is very strange. And again, what relevance does it have
Maybe
to
like humanize
anything?
her or something. I don't know. I just found it very odd. I mean, you and I know that they played defense from the beginning with this case. I mean, the entire case and all the witnesses called in a certain order was all to basically defend the McCabe's and the Alberts. They really had nothing to add. I don't know. It was just such a weird. I mean, they could have been called in rebuttal, right? There was no reason for Allie and
Mhm.
Colin, any of those people really who were not at 34, like Chris and Julie Albert, allegedly, were not there. There was no reason for them to be called in the case in chief. They could have been called in
Right.
rebuttal if necessary,
Right.
you
My
know?
question to you is, what evidence do they bring forth that proves Karen Reed's guilt?
It's like, okay, none of these people did it, therefore Karen Reed did it. I mean, that was their whole
And but also
theory.
we didn't investigate any of these people in the beginning, or really at at any point, to rule them out, but now we're trying to rule them out after the fact with unverifiable screenshots.
Right. And how that was allowed in, I'll never know. Hopefully they'll make a motion to keep it out this time because it really it was not
But why
authenticated.
doesn't the defense, why don't they file a motion to seek I mean, the Commonwealth just filed that motion to try and seek Karen Reed's parents' phone records from that time. Why doesn't the defense file a motion to obtain Allie and Colin's phone records from that time?
I think they will. I think, that it's the Commonwealth's burden to turn over all of their evidence first, right? And
Hmm.
then the time starts to run for the defense to do the same. So, I mean, they could
But
be making motions. Now they have more time.
and it may be a strategic thing where I would totally understand why the defense would want to do this, which would be to, kind of like they want to hold their strategy, and uh they don't want to give because I think they realized it kind of backfired on them based on who they're dealing with here. All of the information that they kind of gave up earlier on, but they also have to, when you're filing a Rule 17 motion, you have to show cause to get access to more evidence.
Right.
And then they saw, like, the Commonwealth is just going to make excuses or develop explanations to explain all these things away. So, they may be holding all their evidentiary motions back until, like, the last minute or something like that.
Right.
But do you know if Bev has said anything about a deadline for filing evidentiary motions?
I haven't seen a schedule. I haven't seen a schedule
Okay.
yet. And
Yeah, I don't
the
seem to
SJC
remember.
still hasn't, the decision still didn't come
Right.
out yet. So I'm curious about that. Let's go here. The sirens were not on. I don't know if the sirens were on or not. Do you? I don't know.
I don't seem to remember hearing them in like the dash cam footage that we saw, but
There was a blizzard outside with gusts of 48 to 50 miles an hour. Well, we could still hear Karen screaming bloody murder in the dash cam footage and the voicemail that we listened to. And then it says when Brian Albert came downstairs, John was already leaving in the ambulance. Well,
wait, sorry, what does it say?
when Brian Albert, so this is still, we're talking about why Brian Albert didn't come out of the house. And then the answer to that is because when Brian Albert came downstairs, John was already leaving in the ambulance. But if Coco or someone else in the room picked up Coco's phone at 6:07 and 6:08, I think the ambulance didn't leave. It wasn't en route until I want to say like 6:17, maybe
Yeah, I don't think it
later.
no, I think it left around 6:24-ish, I want to say.
Right. So by the time he came downstairs, John was already leaving in the ambulance. It doesn't mean he shouldn't have come downstairs sooner.
Well, I mean, wouldn't I mean, aren't you just curious? Like,
Yeah, I mean, you're a first
this is in
responder.
your front
It's in
yard.
your
Like, I
blood.
would be like, what the heck is going on in my front yard right now?
Wouldn't you maybe be worried that perhaps it was one of your 5 kids?
Wouldn't you be worried that I don't know, maybe it's the person that was invited over to your house the night before?
Well, I
Like,
mean, he claims that he didn't even know that John was invited to his house. He didn't even know he was coming. But if he did come, I would have welcomed him in. Okay, so you've got 5
yeah.
children and there's lights and maybe not sirens, but fire trucks, ambulances, a couple of Canton PD cruisers, all with lights on. You've got 5 kids. Your daughter, admittedly, they admitted what time Caitlin actually left, right?
Mm-hmm.
When her boyfriend picked her up, even though he had to go plow some snow at like
That whole
3 in the
story makes
morning.
no sense.
And then would it not even like occur to you that maybe something happened to one of your kids right outside your house?
Right. Well, I
Because
mean,
that would be the first thing I would think.
you don't have to know it's like just basic humanity. Like, you don't have to know somebody to be concerned that there's a human who is like, clearly if there's ambulances and first responders and all these emergency vehicles outside your house, it's not because there's something good going on, it seems to suggest that like there's a medical emergency.
Right.
And like, it's just ridiculous. I mean, you don't have to know. You don't The point is that you don't know what's going on, so you go outside to figure out what's going on.
Right. And if you're the deputy chief or whatever the hell he was, the acting chief of the Canton PD, Tom Kelleher, and you live right across the street, how come you're not coming out and you're not on scene when your guys are coming that you're in charge of are responding to the scene? How come if he was home giving out solo cups, how come he didn't go over and help?
Right.
That's his
It's like,
police department. They're the first
did
on
he
scene was Canton PD.
like have some prior knowledge or something? Like, it's like, you could perhaps explain, especially for people who are first responders, right? And these people, they, for a living, investigate crime, like we were saying earlier, naturally inquisitive. Like, wouldn't they be curious to go out, especially when it's like, okay, these are my people, this is these are my colleagues responding to a scene outside my house, like, let me go see what's going on.
Yeah,
um but the an explanation for why somebody like that wouldn't go out is because maybe they already know, they already know there's a situation, and of course then that opens up the the question of like, well, why do they already know? And
right.
that's a whole other.
Somebody KPT's pointing out that Kelleher was only a lieutenant at the time, and that he got a promotion a couple months after this. Seems like
Yes.
everyone gets promoted over at Canton PD.
Hmm.
Allie says they all had prior knowledge because Higgins left the Alberts house and went straight to the Canton PD at like 3 a.m. He had to move those cars around. I don't think he ever went home. Remember his whole story about how They didn't have any Jameson, so he knew he wasn't going to stick around 34 for a long time. So, he split. He did the Irish exit, I think he said, and then but in the meantime, at 12:20, he's texting John like, "You coming over here?"
Right. Yeah. I mean, why would you text him that if you don't have plans to hang out for a bit?
And then he goes to Canton PD to move some cars around. And then he claims that he went home and he was like, that's when they were butt dialing back and forth because maybe he had a couple more drinks when he got home. I don't remember where he lived, but I don't think it was very close.
Roxbury, I think.
I don't know how close I don't know, but didn't he have like a bed or something in the Canton PD in his office? Like, I don't think he ever went home, but that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and all these questions could have been answered,
Mhm.
with a proper investigation. And another, I think, just overlooked fact that really came out at the first trial is how many people testified to this new fact that had never come out before this, which is that apparently Brian Higgins, his Jeep Wrangler with a snowplow was parked out front of 34 Fairview, right in front of the mailbox, which is at the end of the driveway. That is huge because that alone completely disproves the possibility of the Commonwealth's theory, because if his snowplowed Jeep Wrangler was parked right there, Karen Reed would have crashed into his car.
Mhm. Yeah, with
And
her
and guess what? You can if you want to try and say that the key cycle that they're relying upon is the actual key cycle for that trip, well then show me where Karen Reed jerks the steering wheel 180 degrees, or however much, to get last minute Max Verstappen get out of the way and not hit the Jeep Wrangler with the snowplow, because it's not there.
right.
Um, and so it's like,
So much
I,
of
I want to
that,
see, let's see Hank Brennan put that into his reconstruction with the
right.
reconstruction analyst, because he has to, right? If these witnesses are so reliable and credible,
Mhm.
you can't cherry pick the information from them that you rely upon.
Right. They have to use it all because they have to assume they all told the truth. And I remember Lally really digging in with him about, which way was your plow tilted or facing or, like
Yep.
a lot of questioning about that. Like,
I
did
have a
you,
theory about that,
yeah,
actually.
please enlighten us.
I was thinking about it a lot at the time, because I think for everybody, we were like, this came out of nowhere. Like, what the heck is this about? And again, with, certain other stories that the witnesses told, I always got the sense that it's like, oh, they're trying to protect from something that the feds could potentially know or find out. And I was recently thinking about the whole Jeep Wrangler snowplow thing, and exactly what you're referring to, how Brian Higgins he went into great detail about how when he was leaving, he forgot that his snowplow was down and he forgot to lift it. And so when he initially started up his car and like started driving forward, it, did the whatever on the ground, and because he forgot to lift it. And they just like going into painstaking detail about how his plow uh made contact with the ground for some period of time right there on Fairview in front of the house. And I was thinking, what if Higgins, at some point, whether it was at the time that he was leaving 34 Fairview or at the time that you know, if he came back in the middle of the night to help with moving certain things, um, what if because we know that there was apparently a Ford Edge parked right in front of where John O'Keefe's body would later be found in the middle of the night, which suggests that it was parked there to serve as, a barrier to protect from potential people who might be passing by, but also I would say surveillance cameras that any neighbors across the street or down the road might have. Um, and so I was thinking, what if Brian Higgins had snow plowed some snow into that area as well, before potentially the Ford Edge was moved into position to act as like another potential barrier to try and obfuscate John's body until more snow would fall on top of it after he was placed there. Because of course there's going to be snowplow drivers at some point coming by,
Mm-hmm.
and well, there's a very relevant Google search in this case: how long to die in cold.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to increase that time, if you're trying to delay from John being found, which the witnesses' actions all seem to support that, um, you would try to do that. You would, do things to obfuscate his body so that it isn't easily found or quickly spotted or whatever. And so, I mean, that's a potential theory having to do with his snowplow. If he had plowed at some point, snow to try and create like a little mini snowbank or something, even though there wasn't that much snow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I don't know. It's what do you have any
It's
thoughts
just,
on that whole?
I mean, he says that he got there first, right? And like Mom James says, there was no snow on the driveway for him to plow it at 12:10 a.m. He says that he got there
Right.
first and he plowed the driveway for them.
So that's the other reason why I was thinking this could, potentially be an explanation, because it's sure it's at a different time. If he did in fact plow like a little mini snowbank over there later in the night.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as that person just said, if you just look at the surveillance footage that the Commonwealth put up, there's the surveillance footage after they had all just left the bar,
Yep.
and it shows the blacktops, the parking lot, the street. There's no snow on it. Like there's just the slightest dusting on the grass, but it all melted as soon as it hit the blacktop. So I don't really know what he would have been plowing at the time he got back to 34 Fairview.
And wouldn't the plow just like scrape along the driveway? It was just so, I have to think that everything that these people are saying is carefully orchestrated, like
Mm-hmm.
like it's been rehearsed. And so they have a reason for saying what they said. And I don't think we're ever going to know what it is. Right.
Well,
So
that's the
it's just
thing. It has no
weird.
relevance. Like,
Right.
there's no relevance to the case or to proving Karen Reed's guilt. So there has to be another explanation.
Right. And this moves us to our next slide here, which is Colin was in the house and killed John O'Keefe. And these are the reasons why people think that that can't be true, because 9 people were in the house and most of them saw Colin. All have stated that Colin left before Karen's car arrived. Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true, that all of them saw Colin, or
Well,
that
how
all
did
of
all
them.
those people know what kind of car Karen Reed had, first of all? I
Uh-huh.
mean, they all conveniently forgot to mention the presence of a Ford F-150, which is a huge, like, unmissable truck,
Mm-hmm.
pickup truck, that was there at the same time that Karen Reed arrived. Um, and yeah, I mean, they,
So I don't know that that's even accurate, that most of them saw Colin. I don't know how many people were asked if they saw Colin. I mean, Colin says that he
but also
left.
people can lie. Like,
Right.
there's that.
Um, Other friends of Brian Albert Jr. also left before all the adults returned home from the waterfall, not just Colin. Oh, okay. So what? So what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, has nothing to do with.
Colin has evidence proving he was home well before John and Karen showed up. What was
What
that?
is
His
it?
testimony that he went up and said, "Mom, I'm home," and gave her a kiss and hoped she was feeling better. What evidence is there of that?
Well, actually, Chris and Julie Albert's testimony actually proved that Colin Albert got home much later than he claims, and then the Commonwealth claims. I think it puts him there like it's like be past 12:30. I forget. I did this a while ago when I was going through the testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly if he left at 12:10 a.m., it's like a 5-minute drive from 34 Fairview to his house. And let's say you're generous and you give like extra buffering and you say, okay, let's say it's 10 minutes max. So let's say if he left at 12:10 a.m., he had to have been home at the latest by 12:20 a.m. But that's not corroborated by Chris Albert and Julie Albert's story. And Chris Albert is spotted leaving the waterfall with time-stamped surveillance footage, which is far more reliable
Mm-hmm.
than, you know, people who can forget things or who can lie, and unverified screenshots.
Mm-hmm. So he also says he walked home and he lived behind the library, we're now finding out, right? So
Yeah.
if he walked home, would he be seen walking home in that library footage, the missing library footage? Wait, this is interesting. Hold on. And Magnolia Gypsy says, but he was in the house. They finally admitted he was in the house, so it's not a rumor, right? Because initially they left him out of everything. He was out of it. He was not in any police report, even though they mentioned other people who were at the house for Bry's birthday that weren't there when everyone else got there. Colin's name was kept out of it for a reason, obviously. And then they had to admit that he was there.
What's interesting is in Michael Proctor's reports, he actually lists all of the, Brian Albert Jr.'s friends, even including the ones who were there like way earlier in the night, who had left, who had, apparently left before anybody had gotten back from the bar, like Emily, what's her name? Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting
I remember
some
there
names,
was
but
an
there's
Emily
Fabiano, Emily
Fabiano. Yep.
Kent, I think, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, all those people, Michael Proctor lists all those people out, but he leaves out Colin Albert. And it's like of anybody for him to have forgotten or what have you, it certainly wouldn't have been Colin Albert. I mean, he already knew Colin Albert. Colin Albert was at his sister's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
The Alberts are the Proctor's second family.
Right. Right.
So it's like,
I want to now. I want to know what's in that missing video from the 2
oh, I
minutes.
know, right?
I mean, so he says he walked home. The initial witness statements say that they went back to 34 Fairview. I don't know. There's so much more that could be dug into here, and it's like the truth stays the same, right?
Right.
Lies change. So why are there so many stories? Allie said on the stand, Colin left the house before John got there or something like that. And a lot of people were making a big deal about that.
Right.
Uh, Colin, why would Allie not go in the house to say happy birthday to Brian if her parents
It's a
were
good
there?
question.
Her
It's a
parents'
good
car is in the
question.
driveway and she's picking up Colin and she doesn't go in to say hi.
Well, it based on the timing, and I think some of the testimony, I think that they're claiming that she picked Colin up before, like right before her parents had arrived, because I believe Jen and Matt arrived around like 12:19 a.m.
And he's saying 12:10. Everyone said 12:10, 12:10, 12:10.
Right. But I agree with you on everything else. I mean, why wouldn't you go inside and wish your cousin a happy birthday or
Mm-hmm.
say hi? And isn't it just weird that uh Allie McCabe allegedly picked Colin Albert up from his friend's house to drive him to 34 Fairview, and then not long after that goes to pick him up from 34 Fairview and drive him home?
Right. Why wouldn't she just go in and stay? And where is that guy, Michael, whose house he was at? I
Right.
want to hear from him. I want to know. He knows
Right.
something.
Was he even there? I mean,
Right.
these
Um,
things all are important. But also with Chris Albert, with the whole walking home thing,
mhm.
um, I mean, it's certainly possible, but did well, we know police didn't make any efforts to corroborate that's like to, pull any surveillance footage along his route home to see if he did in fact walk home.
Mhm.
But my question is Chris Albert came over to the bar from his work from D&E Pizza, which is like, right next door. Um, didn't wouldn't he have driven to work? I mean, I know that he didn't live like it wasn't too far away how far he lived, but the everybody knew that this huge blizzard storm was coming. I mean, it's the middle of the winter, it's
Right.
freezing out. Like it's just doesn't seem like the time of year that you would be walking to work anywhere in New England. So, and so my question is, the assumption would be he drove to work, and like if so, where was his car? Why didn't he drive home? Because we know that Julie Albert, she drove there separately, uh,
Mhm.
and then she left early because she had, the
The
migraine.
migraine.
And so it's not like Julie Albert got dropped off there and then she drove his car home, assuming his car was, at D&E.
Mhm.
So I just think there's a lot that's curious around that. And then like I go down the rabbit hole and I'm like, is Chris Albert telling this story, assuming that if it's not true and he didn't walk home, is he telling this story that he walked home because, well, he has a record in, what was it, 96 or whenever the hit and run that he had,
Mhm.
and he doesn't want to, testify, incriminate himself or testify that he was driving after drinking
Right.
and potentially open up himself up to any liability in that respect. Like, I don't know, but these are these are the questions that I ask when
Right. He killed a
they
man, allegedly
right.
drunk driving, and then it took him 30 hours to turn himself in. And when he turned himself in, the lawyer that represented him is Judge Cannoni's brother, right?
Yep. John Prescott Jr.
So there's that weird connection. He had a DUI
So
homicide. That is
crazy.
correct. And what did he did something like 6 months in jail?
6 months in jail, which is 3 months more than the amount of time that Aiden Aiden Kearney did in jail for what
For
is
not killing
now
anyone.
right for not killing anyone. I
Wow.
mean, it's just crazy.
Well, I think Aiden did 60 days. So yeah, 4 months. Wow.
True, yeah.
Um,
I think originally it was supposed to be 90 days, but yeah, you're right.
yeah, exactly. And then they had to walk it back because it was unconstitutional. Mm.
Seems to be a theme here.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. There's no constitution in Massachusetts. What are you talking about? Different rules. Um, here's your this is your wheelhouse, girl. So go with it. So here's the Google search, the 227. Both Jen McCabe and the state have consistently stated that the Google search did not happen at 2:27 a.m. Okay, that does not make it so. I'm just going to keep going. Jen informed officers that Karen Reed asked her to Google how long it takes to die in the cold. Karen also asked first responders the same question, and multiple of them testified to that. Take these
Okay,
one
so
at a time.
that's just false
Right.
because multiple first responders did not testify to that. I think there was one first responder who was good friends with Carrie Roberts and seemed very turned off by Karen Reed because of a comment Karen Reed made to him in the ambulance about Carrie Roberts.
Mhm.
He's the one, I'm forgetting his
I know
name
his
right
name. His
now.
name is Timothy Nuttall, and I have a special
No, no,
emoji
no, it's
just for
not
him.
him.
Wait, puffy
No,
jacket. Puffy jacket is for him. Isn't he the one who said he was wearing a puffy jacket? He was convinced, and
yeah, Nuttall's the one who who said the puffy jacket
oh, is
thing,
this
but
Flamati?
no, it's not one of it. It's not one of the EMTs who was taking care of John. It's one of the ones who came back to section Karen.
Uh-huh.
And he's the same one who lives in Carrie Roberts' neighborhood. And uh, he testified about how Carrie Roberts was having like a neighborhood party, back in the day at one point, and asked him if he could get a fire truck from the fire department for the party or something to that
Mm-hmm.
effect. And and so obviously, like, he's telling all this uh to show that they were good friends and neighbors and knew each other. But I don't even believe that he didn't if I remember correctly, he didn't testify that Karen Reed asked him that question verbatim. I think it was something that could have loosely been interpreted
Mm-hmm.
to be similar to that. But I mean, they also said Karen Reed was asking, is he alive? Is he dead? Is he alive? Whatever. If she asked this EMT that while she's being driven to the hospital, I mean, that's very different than what Jen McCabe claims. But there's a few other problems here. Jen McCabe's story that she testified to on the stand about how Karen Reed asked her to Google that, she testified that
Whitley, that was his
this
name. Daniel Whitley.
Whitley, yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Mizzy. Thanks, Mizzy.
um, so if you recall, in her Jen McCabe's February 2nd, 2022 interview with Trooper Kathleen Prince, who was notably not on the Commonwealth's witness list, but on the defense's witness list,
Mm-hmm.
and with Trooper Connor Keefe, this is the only interview of Jen McCabe's where she even discusses the whole Google search thing. And she claims the way it came about was when she was seated in the back of a police cruiser with Karen, or in the back of a car, a cruiser, whatever, with Karen. And Karen Reed was asking her to pray and say Our Fathers with her.
Mm-hmm.
And, was apparently like saying something about like having her period because of the blood on her face
Mm-hmm.
from the CPR.
Yep.
And then Jen McCabe claims in that interview, she claimed that was then when Karen asked her twice to Google how long to die in the cold twice, or how long did it take to die from hypothermia.
Mm-hmm.
And I always found that interesting how Jen like made a point of saying how she asked her twice to Google that. And it's like, that's not something, if somebody asked you to Google something, you wouldn't, like, even if they asked you twice or three times in a row, that's not a detail that you would like report back to someone when you're being interviewed. Like, she asked me that twice, but it is something that you would like make a point of saying if you distinctly remember having Googled that thing twice in the
Mm-hmm.
morning. So that's something that was weird to me. But also, most importantly, when she's testifying, she claims that her story changes on the stand, and she claims that they were in the back of a car, and then they moved and got out of the car, and she's standing outside with Karen, and Carrie Roberts, walked away. So it's just conveniently just her and Karen and no one else within earshot conveniently. And it's so frigid and cold. And so she's shaking because she has MS.
MS, the
And
hands, yeah.
Karen Reed asks her while the while the first responders are wheeling John's body over to the ambulance, Karen Reed asks her to Google how long to die from hypothermia. But there's a problem with that, because I went back through the dash cam surveillance footage and found the exact time that they were wheeling John O'Keefe's body over to the ambulance. And that happened at 12:15, or sorry, 6:15 a.m. Jem McCabe doesn't make those Google searches until 6:23 and 6:24 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And she claims that she made them at the time that Karen asks her when John's body is being wheeled into the back of the ambulance, which is categorically disproven by that surveillance footage. It's proven to be a lie by that surveillance footage. And of course, if you're making that whole story up, you could see how like a detail you would get a detail like that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that it doesn't add up, and it's clearly she's lying.
If it happened, it would be on some dash cam footage. If they were sitting in the back of a police cruiser, there's a
Well,
camera
that
in there,
too. Yeah,
right?
if they were sitting in the back. So this is the other thing that it's like, I feel like Jem McCabe probably realized from her interview where she tells that story about them being in the back of a police cruiser. I'm sure at that time, or at that point in time when she was being interviewed back on February 2nd, they didn't realize, or she didn't realize, that there's dash cams in the police cruisers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
now the story has to evolve a little bit. Oh, now no, now we were actually outside, and that's what she testifies to on the stand. But yet again, the dash cam surveillance footage disproves that whole story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the reason she typed it twice was because she had to spell it the same way that she spelled it at
Right.
2:23 or 2:27, depending on when you think she opened that tab. So then it goes on to say, Celebrate, the digital analysis software, acknowledged a glitch in its system. It confirmed that the search at 2:27 a.m. wasn't new, but rather a previously open tab Jen used to search for her kids' basketball team. The same tab was reopened the next morning when Karen asked her to search it. Go
Well,
for it.
there's so many. I mean, I could talk all day on this, but I'll try and keep it short.
Did Celebrate
w-
ever acknowledge a glitch in its system?
yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's totally accurate.
According to Ian
But
Whiffen.
yeah, I mean, I well, you know what? Like, people should be asking Celebrate a lot of questions then, because if that's in fact the case, then um they should be put on they should be put on under the spotlight, because their their tool is used as evidence to incriminate and lock up so many people. So if
Everyone.
it's not reliable, then and if that's not reliable, then what is reliable from Celebrate? Um but also, if you look at the specifics of Ian Whiffen's testimony, for instance, because he's like supposed to be the representative of Celebrate, which I also find curious. Is he testifying on his own behalf as an expert witness, or is he testifying on behalf of Celebrate the company? And the defense ought to kind of clarify that on the record or something, because I don't know that Celebrate has expert witnesses that they put forth at trials. And I think clarifying that is important, because I think it bolsters his credibility if he's specifically coming there on behalf of Celebrate, in addition to being a supposed expert on digital forensics. But But when you break down the specifics of Ian Whiffin's testimony, he says that the circumstances of what could potentially cause this whole glitch or whatever they're saying happened
There's a
would
glitch in the matrix.
well, those would all require, and based on his own testing, those require her to not have used her phone, not have like done other things on her phone in between the two searches. So like the 2:27 a.m. search and the 6:23 a.m. search. And he specifically said that if the phone, for instance, were turned off, then all of this stuff, all of this that I'm testifying to is null and void. Because if the phone is turned off, then this can't happen that way. Like there can't be this supposed glitch. And Gemma Cabe claims that she turned her phone off when she went to sleep, which is also curious because if you turned your phone off, then how did you wake up to a phone call in the morning?
Right.
But my whole thing with the Google search is there's a Quantico trained digital forensic expert from the FBI who confirms that the 2:27 a.m. Google search happened. And why do I find that more reliable and credible than, say, Ian Whiffen or Jessica Hyde's testimony? Because don't get me wrong, I'm not disputing, whether they're qualified or experts in the field. But here's the thing that they don't have access to, that the feds have access to. The feds have access to literally anything else that they want. Third-party records, Jen McCabe's iCloud records, Jen McCabe's cell phone records, Jen McCabe's Wi-Fi data, Google geofence, which Google
Yeah.
geofence specifically shows you data about where individuals, especially when they're using Google programs where they make Google searches, or if you're using your Gmail or something like that, the Google geofence would show us that the 2:27 a.m. search was made at a location distinct from the location Jen was at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m., which is a further way of differentiating the
Right.
searches.
Yeah.
And so the feds have access to all of that information, which I imagine was probably used in coming to their conclusion. They probably used not only this digital forensic expert, but also all of those other third-party sources that they have access to, and Jessica Hyde and Ian Whiffen don't.
Right. They weren't giving it all the information, so their testimony is only as good as the information that they were given. I mean, Ian Whiffin's testimony to me was like one big long infomercial for him to sell his own app, right? Because he talked about that a lot. I had to go out and invent my own app, and I have, I don't know, 60 worldwide users or however many worldwide users he had. And he did say repeatedly that he did not, right, that he was not representing Celebrite. And in fact, he told them that their timestamps weren't accurate. And so they had to fix their software. And my God, man, if that's the case, every defendant in the country that's been convicted on Celebrite data is going to want to get out of jail. They're banging the doors down. So to
Well,
me, also, I think Jessica Hyde was not given any data after the January 29th. I mean, she was given a very limited, specific amount of data without things like, I don't know, hash marks or whatever is it hash marks?
so actually no, Jessica Hyde, she states in her report that she actually did hash verify the extraction that she was sent. But Ian Whiffen, notably, he testified to on the stand, if you recall, David Yannetti asked him if he was aware of programs like MySQLite, which is a program that allows people to essentially go in on the back end and into the databases and selectively delete or alter data. And so Yannetti asks him about that, and on rebuttal, Lally asks Ian Whiffen sure, like that thing exists or whatever, but don't you have a way of basically protecting against the possibility that someone could have done that, or verifying, that whatever, that couldn't have, the data couldn't have been altered? And Ian Whiffen says, yes, actually, in fact, verify, we have these things called hash values, which allow us to verify that.
Oh man, did you just cut off? Uh-oh, did we lose Olivia? You guys can hear me, right? Olivia, you might have to go back out and come back in. You might have to go back out and come back in. Let's look at some super chats while we're waiting for Olivia. Oh, hold on. All right. Okay, well, wait. Now I got to kick this one out.
Oh no.
Bye-bye. I have to kick you out there. Okay, you still here?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Sorry about
I don't know.
that.
That was weird. Okay, go on. You were in the middle of a thought.
um so yes, so on rebuttal with Lally, Ian Whiffen testifies, yes, in fact, there is this thing that allows us to verify that the data we're analyzing hasn't been altered. And he says that we do this via the hash values. We verify the hash value. But coincidentally, Lally doesn't ask him whether he verified the hash value in this case, which uh, David Yannetti, I believe, or no, actually, I think he actually says himself that he didn't verify the hash. I don't even know that he was prompted or asked this question. So I was like, that's funny, that you just said how important it is to verify the hash value to authenticate the data and to make sure it hasn't been altered. But then you proceed to testify that you didn't do that in this case. And so it's, pretty discrediting to the conclusions he came to, because he can't authenticate what he received and he can't verify that the data were not altered. But you know what I find more interesting than that is the Commonwealth hired two experts to defend Jen McCabe and her Google search, and they limited the scope of these experts so much, which is interesting because the whole thing that prompted this was when the defense, once they finally got the cell phone extractions in February of 2023, and they came out with these explosive findings in April of 2023, that wasn't the only incriminating digital evidence that the defense found. It wasn't just a Google search, it was John's Apple Health data.
Mm-hmm.
It was also all of the stuff Jen McCabe deleted from her cell phone. Um, and beyond that, there was another digital evidentiary fact that was in dispute between the defense and the Commonwealth, which is John O'Keefe's cell phone's GPS data. Um,
Yeah.
and my question is why didn't the Commonwealth have these digital forensic experts who they went out of their way to hire look at all of that digital evidence? And also, if they're going to pick and choose what things to have them look at, wouldn't it be more of a priority to have them look at the things that would incriminate Karen Reed
Yes.
rather than defend Jen McCabe?
Yes. Yes. Why didn't they have them evaluate John O'Keefe's Apple Health data? All of that stuff.
Or his GPS data? And
Yes. The
it's
GPS data.
probably it's probably because if they had been given, the flexibility to look at the entire extraction for Jen McCabe, to look at the deletions, to look at, the GPS data on John's phone, then perhaps with that context, they wouldn't have come to the conclusion that Jen McCabe, that they did about the 2:27 a.m. Google search, because of course context is very important when you have other incriminating evidence on that same cell phone.
Right. Right. I mean, it just made no sense. Again, why are you bringing these people in, these experts, on your case in chief? Why not put that burden on the defense?
Right.
It just made no sense. This whole case was tried backwards, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So this whole GPS, so there's a lot of I don't even know if this is in here. This is I don't know. It doesn't matter. The fact that, they're saying that the GPS on John's phone shows that it never left that front yard and it never went into the house. Here's something I want you to talk about, like the margin of error. And even like, who testified about that? Was it Trooper Paul or Garino?
That was Trooper Guarino, and
Okay.
I
Yeah,
have
because
so much on this.
I want to tell you about what happened in Brian Walsh, because I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the affidavits, and I think it was Proctor who signed off on these, and Garino,
Ooh.
I believe, and Brian Walsh also,
Mm-hmm.
in his arrest warrants and the affidavits of probable cause, they say part of the data and the reason that they were able to prove that he killed his wife is because by looking at his cell phone forensics, and you can probably say it way more eloquently than I can, one of the days in which they evaluated his data, he went to the dumpster at his mother's apartment complex. And another day, he went inside the building.
Yeah. So there's a
So
few things.
how far away is the dumpster from the inside of that building? And why can you find that out in the Brian Walsh case, but not in the John O'Keefe case?
So, the thing that's really interesting, if you want to compare, because that's what I like to do, actually,
Yeah.
it's the best way to find out if they're just full of crap or not, is look at their own prior work and look at their own other investigations to compare how they do things there versus in the Karen Reed case. And in the Brian Walsh case, first of all, the first thing that stood out to me was just how many pages of GPS location data they have in evidence.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even give us that data in their court documents here. They gave us a page and a half typed up report from Super Guarino, but they didn't actually ever provide any of the raw data, which is all provided in the Brian Walsh case. And for Brian Walsh's vehicle, I forget if it's for his or his mom's vehicle. I want to say it's his mom's. Um, they pulled the GPS data for that, and there's 17 pages of the raw GPS data just for that car alone in the Brian Walsh case. And the reason why the raw data is so important, particularly as it relates to GPS and location data, is because GPS data is very like contextual, if you will, because of a value that is the degrees of accuracy. Um, like each data point for GPS data, you have a latitude and a longitude, but that is not the data point of this location of the cell phone. It actually is relative to the degrees of accuracy, which is essentially, it forms the radius of a circle around those latitude and longitude points, and the entire area of that circle, um could any point within that circle could be where the person or the cell phone is located at that point in time. And but the other thing you have to keep in mind is that with GPS data and degrees of accuracy, that is in what's, I think it's called open sky or blue sky conditions, which in GPS means like cornfields in Kansas, where you don't have things like overcast or an incoming blizzard, or
Yep.
you're not, or, you know, buildings, trees, all of those things, they all affect the degrees of accuracy. So the degrees of accuracy, that is in the perfect ideal setting. And if you look at the Commonwealth's, the data that they selectively chose to include um, any visual maps showing their GPS data for John, it actually shows that the circle that would be representative of his cell phone's location overlapping with 34 Fairview.
Right.
Um, but the other thing is that uh, Guarino just categorically misinterpreted or misunderstands how the GPS forensics or the location forensic data is, how it works on an iPhone, because he was looking at the location data from the Waze app from John's phone.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at location forensics on an iPhone, iPhones use what's called an AGPS system, which is a hybrid GPS system that, unlike traditional GPS that just relies on satellites, in iPhones, it also uses things like cell phone signal from cell phone towers. It also uses Wi-Fi. It uses a number of different sources to form the best picture of where one's location is. Um, and when you're looking at data from an iPhone that came from a third-party app like Waze, um, and specifically with Waze and with most navigation apps, they use what is called a monotonic time system. So that's time programming in the iOS world, and that is a different time system than the native time system on an iPhone, which is called display time, or, you know, like the display system. So that would be the time you see on your phone when you look at it. That's the display time.
Right.
Monotonic time, in the case of uh, that night specifically, there's an offset of nearly 3 minutes.
Hmm.
And Guarino, whether out of ignorance or whether he intentionally exploited that fact, got that incorrect in his interpretation of the GPS data. But Guarino also didn't even use a forensic tool to process or analyze the GPS data. He took the, you know, the GPS points from Celebrate, but then he
Mm-hmm.
went to the scene and plugged them into a Sartopo app, which is
Right.
a search and rescue app.
Right.
He introduced human error into the mix, and it's non-forensic. There's no way of repeating what he did because they didn't lay out, you know, exactly how they did their project. Um, and But beyond that, here's the other thing that's important for people to understand. If you, first of all, Brian Albert testified that the cell phone service at his house is terrible. And
He did.
he,
He wasn't
yes.
the only one. Many people said there's a dead zone there and that the service sucks at his house. You're right.
And actually, Richard Green's analysis of the GPS location data from Jen's cell phone seems to corroborate this fact, because it, around 1:47 a.m., when she's, you know, emerging from the house and leaving 34 Fairview, he he notes in his report that the signal improves greatly, signal accuracy improves greatly. um and there is a distinct phenomenon that happens with your cell phone, where it actually happened in a case I was just looking at, um where the individual was brought into the police department for questioning, and he is brought down into, as they say the bowels of the, whatever police department. So he's like in the basement of the police department
Mhm.
for several hours of interrogation. And during that time, his cell phone GPS location data showed him in all of these different locations. It was in like a kind of a city area. And it showed him in all these different locations, blocks away from the police department. It didn't show him in the police department. And the reason for this is because when you go into a building or a house or a structure, and especially when you go down below ground, like into a basement, your phone, because it's this hybrid system, it will usually switch from satellite over to a cell tower, because satellites, they rely on, you have to think of it in terms of physical barriers are going to compromise a satellite from,
Mhm.
signaling to the cell phone. And so cell phones, what you'll see when people go into a basement, for instance, the location data of the cell phone, when it's in a basement, will be coming from cell towers, which are far less precise in, pinpointing someone's location at a given point in time. And that's why that person, when they were brought into that police department for their interrogation, why their phone, was not a reliable source of their location.
Right. I mean, you can notice just a simple example for anyone is anytime you go into like Costco or any big box store, like
Hmm.
you lose all signal of everything
Right.
because the thick walls and, it's just the way it is. So how does that relate to um, whether or not John O'Keefe went into the house? We don't really
Well,
know.
if he went into the basement, um, which based on, so Apple Health data's accuracy does not at all rely upon satellites or cell towers or Wi-Fi signal like location data does. Apple Health data just is, and it keeps logging data even if your phone is put into airplane mode, for instance.
Hmm.
And so his phone shows him climbing flights of stairs between what is it, like 12:21 or 12:22 to like 12:24 something AM.
Right.
Um, and so, which suggests that John, immediately upon entering the house, went, you know, climbed some flights of stairs. So that would require to him to have gone downstairs, or, and I'm assuming he didn't go upstairs to the bedroom floor. Um,
Right.
and so, assuming he goes right into the basement after entering the house, this phenomenon would, and then you also factor in that there's not good reception at the house already. um his cell phone GPS data would not be a reliable portrayal of his exact location at that given point in time. And the other thing is like, I've never seen a case where the police use one's cell phone location data to say where they were not, and especially when that place is like 15 feet away from
Right.
the other place.
Right. It's not that far. I
But
mean, God.
I'll finish after this, I promise.
No, 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 keep going. I'm fascinated. You're wicked smart. Wicked smart. See, you guys, I told you. You're missing
Well,
out if you haven't been following Olivia.
oh my gosh, I'm like, I need to get all of this out at some point.
I know.
um but the other thing that is like so troubling is the Commonwealth, they didn't even look at any of the location or GPS data from John O'Keefe's cell phone until after the defense had first looked at it and put it into a report, which was over 15 months after the fact. And that was the first time that they looked at this data. And well, that's what they say. I mean, I have other thoughts about that, but you know what else is interesting about that is because they specifically say in Guarino's GPS report that he and Trooper Proctor went to 34 Fairview with, like their yardsticks and their search and rescue app
Right.
on, I think it was either May 8th or May 9th of 2023. So like 15 months after the fact. If you look at also the letters that DA Morrissey's office was sending to the feds, and you think about the whole timeline of when they would have found out from the McAlberts, that they were subpoenaed to testify at the federal grand jury. We know that Colin Albert was visited by two FBI agents at his college dorm
Mm-hmm.
on, what was it, April 10th of 2023. So presumably around that time, the DA's office is getting wind of this, and then their letters with the feds begin, I want to say, like not long after that, right? Because they reached out to the feds because
Yeah. They're
of
panicky
the
and they ramp up.
subpoenas.
They ramp
Mm-hmm.
up in their panic as they get closer to August
And
when
I want
Morrissey gives his hostage video.
to, oh my God, that video is crazy.
It's cringe.
I mean, when you go back, especially now with all of the TUI evidence and everything, it's like, how can you take, this is the prosecutor of this office,
Right.
and like 90% of what he said in that video is proven to be a lie now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Michael
crazy.
Proctor was never at the 34th. They're still. The story
But
has changed so much. Keep going. I don't want
the thing
to
about
lose
the
your train of
federal
thought.
letters is, if I remember correctly, I believe that one of the letters was sent like the day before they went out and did their whole GPS, their GPS yardstick measuring project.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just like thinking about all of this in context, and it's like, you know, they would have presumably had more of an incentive to make the data corroborate their theory and confirm their bias. And yeah, it's interesting and that's why, like, people who didn't follow the pre-trial stuff, there's a lot that people are missing, I think, without that.
Yeah.
It really tells a story.
Here's something that I found so interesting. Did you listen to that 34 Fairview podcast at all?
The Phelps one?
The Phelps one, yeah.
I listened to bits and pieces of it. Yeah.
So something that I found to be very interesting, because I did listen to it, and I found that a lot of it was going to be very, very helpful to the defense. So in many ways, we have to thank him for doing this podcast and getting all of these people who are close friends with the McCabe's and the Alberts to speak out, because there was some very interesting information that I gleaned from this. And I did a whole show on how it's helpful to the defense. But one part that we're talking about now is Phelps says in this podcast, he interviewed dozens of people, and he's got hundreds of hours of interviews on tape. And he says at one point during this podcast, he says, testimony at the trial showed that while they were at the house on 34 Fairview, the women were upstairs in the kitchen and the men were downstairs talking about sports and other things, like probably their kids.
Yeah, I remember
the men were
that.
downstairs. Okay, that was never testified to at trial. Back me up on that.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Never.
he said a lot of things like that it's like, so yeah, I want to see your conversations with these
Somebody told him that,
people.
though. Somebody told him that. I don't think, first of all, I don't know if he watched the trial, because if he did, he would know that that never came out of trial.
Didn't.
But he got that information from somewhere, and that puts all the pieces together. Because remember, Nicole Albert, first of all, she was the most nervous witness I've ever seen. Like, give that woman like a gallon of water. She needed a gallon of water. Her mouth was so dry. She was petrified. Talked about how at one point they went to look at some pictures of her son in the Marines, maybe in like the other room. Like there's like when you walk into the house to the left, there's like a living room, and to the right,
the family room
was where they were sitting, right? And then there was another family room, and then the kitchen. I have like the floor plan of the house somewhere, but we don't need it for this. So I think she said at one point they went into that other room to look at the pictures. But that's not what Brian Albert said. Didn't Brian Albert say something like, we went upstairs to look at pictures?
They went upstairs to one of the bedrooms, which was just bizarre. Also because if you look at the listing photos for 34 Fairview, because those photos, you can clearly tell, were taken before they didn't really do much to, change the kind of aesthetics, I would say. Like it's kind of just like how they had at least that's how it looks. How they had the house kind of decorated before they moved out. And if you look at the bedroom photos, I couldn't find any bedroom that had these photos that he's describing. But if you look at the family
you think
room,
I don't have it? I got it. Hang on. Hang on. All right. So here's the foyer. The foyer, right? When you walk in the front door, this is where Coco says people came in and took off their shoes, which I've been saying also from the beginning. We knew John took off his shoes at his own house. So if he came in here and there's a blizzard and there's snow coming, he would have taken off his shoes, because you do the same courtesy for others that you would do for yourself. And where are the goddamn socks, Olivia? Where are the goddamn socks? He had the socks on in the hospital. Were the socks ever shown at trial? Did they ever get logged in?
I don't believe I don't think they were shown at trial. I don't remember seeing them logged into evidence. And you know what else is interesting about the socks?
They would have dog hair on them. Okay, but go on.
Well, they could have, but everybody, especially like Mike Camerato, who seemed just like a wonderful friend to John O'Keefe, and like he really knew John well, testified to how John was like basically very OCD and like organized and like regimented in his ways and what have you. And what stood out to me was in the photo showing his socks like back on his feet, they have the Nike symbols on them. And they were like backwards, like it's almost as if somebody else put his socks back on his feet or something. And it just, I don't know, it just struck me as odd, because I know like when I'm going to put my socks on and there's those symbols or whatever, I'm like, oh, okay, that's the wrong, this is the one for the left, this is the one for the right, whatever. It just, I don't know, it stood out as odd.
Hold on, I have that too. Hold on. It's coming. It's coming. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So
sorry,
there are the
Nike,
socks.
But what is that, Adidas? Yeah.
I'm not sure, but here are the shoes on the the clothes on the pile in the floor.
Yeah, that too. Oh, we should talk we should talk about the clothes at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we can just keep going, but first because we're both like, we have so much to say that we have to we'll get through the pictures of the one. Here somebody sent me this picture. Let me see who I can credit for this. Some people don't want to be credited. A lot of people who have information on this case are like, don't ever use my name. Do not say who I am. I want to remain anonymous. So I'm just going to say Margaret sent this in. And this is a picture of the way the socks are supposed to be on your feet. Oops. Right? These stripes are like underneath. And again, like you're saying, they're on the sides here, kind of weird.
Right. Yeah,
my point is, if he took his shoes off when he went in the house, there's probably dog hair all over that house. Dog hair on the socks would have proven that he was in that house. I don't know that the socks were ever turned in with all the rest of the clothing that was pictured.
Well, and also, if he takes his shoes off upon entering the house, that could potentially explain why the shoes weren't out there in the morning, because they maybe needed to figure out, like, wait, do we know, we need to make sure we know exactly, like, because think of all the people and all the shoes that would have been there at the house that night that his shoes would have probably been mixed in with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if they were trying to make sure, we got to make sure we put the right shoes out or whatever, right? That
Right.
could potentially explain for why they weren't there initially in the beginning
And the
or
hat.
in the morning.
How long did it take to find the hat?
That was like almost a week, I believe. I think it was 6 days.
I heard it was a pretty unique hat. Might have been
Mm-hmm.
hard to find a dupe for that hat. If you had to replace a hat that maybe was full of blood, because let's face it, he had a gash on the back of his head that was enormous.
Well, where was the blood on the hat?
Exactly. Is it the hat? I have so many questions. My questions is keep getting more and more and more the further we go into this. But before we get too far afield from the pictures of the house, because that's what you want to look at, right? People are saying that these are the doors to the basement, and I do not believe that this is true.
No,
These are the coat closets, right?
Yeah, the door to the basement would be to your right in this photo.
Yeah, on the,
and
like,
it
I
would
don't know
be
if you
on
can
the
see my
left-hand
cursor, but
side.
around this table, yeah? And then there
Yeah,
was
it
like
would
a little,
basically be
okay.
there on that wall.
So this is the family room. That's,
Yeah. So I think it's in that corner there where the shelves are, because Nicole Albert also specifically says the photos on the shelves.
uh
So it could have been,
oh,
it could have
here's a
been
picture.
those.
Here's a picture of a Marine. Hold on.
Right,
I can't
right.
zoom in any further, but there is a picture of a Marine in that house. Wait a
But you
second.
know what else is interesting?
Yeah. Tell me.
There also appears to be photos in the basement, in that room, that one of the
Here's
rooms in the basement, that could, that
Marine.
could
Okay.
also potentially be the photos that are being referenced.
Here's the kitchen with the island we've heard so much about. And then on the other side of this island is like that table, I guess, where they were all sitting, and then she kept looking out the window. Jen McCabe kept looking out the window
Oh
every
yeah,
time
you
she made a text message, right?
want a little fun fact about Jen McCabe? She So Sarah Levinson testified to I think Jen McCabe may have even confirmed this, that she plugged her cell phone into the charger in the kitchen when she got to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we know that she claims, her explanation for her phone call to John O'Keefe at 12:29 a.m. that was answered, and then her subsequent phone calls to his phone later. um she claims that they were all butt dials, but the only problem is that her phone was plugged into the charger, and if you
Mm-hmm.
look at her Apple Health data, because she had not only her phone but also her watch. So for her, there's two different data sources that are collecting movement data in her Apple Health app. And what you'll notice is that during the time, uh you know, overlapping with times that she claims she made butt dials, her phone isn't showing any movement. It's not taking steps because, of course, it's plugged into a charger.
Right.
So it's anchored, it's fixed. So, how exactly do you make butt dials if your phone isn't in your butt pocket
Mm-hmm.
because it's charging and you're not moving around with that phone, that could cause the butt dial to happen or whatever.
Yeah. Like Will says, she said she kept putting it in and out of her pocket, and that's how she kept doing it. But not true. Here's the master bedroom, and you can see, like through this window right here on the right, you can see the house across the street. Like that's how close things are. Like you're telling me that you wouldn't see all these flashing lights?
Yeah, their master bedroom is approximately 45 feet from where John O'Keefe's body was found.
And it's not like the bed is far away from the windows. It's right there.
It's
The windows
directly
are right there.
overlooking the scene and where all these lights would be. And
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
so
right. I
you
mean, I'm
see
not
there's
seeing.
in none of the kids' bedrooms, none of the upstairs bedrooms really. I mean, granted, okay, yeah, it's not showing the entirety of the room. But okay, see, this is the basement. Now this is the other room I was saying that could be
Pictures.
right.
Look at the pictures. And they are pictures. It looks like, I mean, I can't zoom in any more than that, I don't think, but
It looks like there's some plaques there too, which I seem to
yep.
remember Brian Albert saying like we were looking at like pictures and plaques or something like that.
Oh, wait. Oh, hold on.
Mhm.
Let's see if I can make this bigger somehow. I mean, there's a group of 3 men in this picture. This is a certificate of some kind. And who knows if
Pretty
they,
interesting.
it sure is. And then even over here, when we get to this looks all like it was all redone, right?
Yeah,
Wainscoting,
it's possible.
um,
Yeah, it does kind of look like a brand
freshly
new
fresh
cheap
paint.
carpet.
Here's the weight room. There's something on the wall over here. Not sure what this is. Picture of some kind. There's some I don't know, this kind of looks like the gash in the
Yep.
back of someone's head. Like, I'm not saying anybody murdered anybody intentionally at all. He could have slipped and fell and slammed the back of his head onto that thing, and it could have just become an accident that everyone was drunk and they were like, "Oh crap, what do we do?"
It's just crazy to me that
But isn't
doc
that kind of the shape of like what the gash to the
right.
back of his head? We've all seen the photos.
And I mean it looks pretty on point for the size of that laceration too.
Yep. And here's this is like rubber flooring. I don't know what's underneath there. I mean, again, maybe they freshly painted it probably because they were going to put the house on the market, which they planned to do long before this incident ever happened. They had long-term plans to sell their house because their brother sold their house and got a lot of money for it, so they were trying to do it too. And here you can see people have pointed this out too. Like to the right of the back of the house is this giant. It's a double wide gate that you can drive a car through. I mean, that's how wide this gate is to the backyard. And you can see there's some
Yeah.
blacktop here as if they
Yeah,
had
this
parked
is
cars
weird.
back there before at some point. No?
I wondered what the heck that what like when I was going through the listing photos and like also just from looking on like Google Earth and stuff, like what the heck is that?
I mean, it's like if you had a boat on a trailer, right? It would be a good place for you to park it. And, you wouldn't want to. Maybe Canton has rules about what you're allowed to have in your driveway, and you can't have a boat in your driveway. I don't know if they ever had a boat. I'm just speculating. But
Yeah.
you could pull like right RV parking. You could you could drive the car right into or the boat or the RV right into the back of your
That thing
backyard.
is just so weird to me because it looks too big to be like the former uh place where like a shed was like that would be a really big shed if
Yeah,
that
no.
was what that was for. It doesn't look like it's like where there was a sandbox or I don't know, it's bizarre. But
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, just so people are familiar with like the foyer. So here's the foyer, this top photo here, and the 2 doors. So the front door, and then you would come just really just around the corner, and the stairs to the basement would be right here. Yeah, can you see
Mm-hmm.
my cursor? Yeah. So that's the
Exactly.
stairs to the basement. I mean, if the people were, maybe some people didn't see him, and that's why they said the guy never came in the house because maybe they didn't see him. When Higgins texts him and say, are you coming here? And it's 12:20, right? We know they pulled up like shortly thereafter.
Yeah, like a minute after.
So you coming here? Like, did he say something maybe afterwards? Perhaps like come around the back. Come around the back. I'll meet you in the back. And then did he come around the back? And then they go down like
No,
there's a
I think he
bulkhead
went in the
back here.
front door.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I mean with like that, like what makes a lot more sense that the witnesses who were beyond inconsistent, who made no sense, who were proven false by the digital evidence time and time again, it seems
Right.
more likely that they were probably being dishonest or not forthcoming about and but beyond that, even if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, the majority of these witnesses weren't even interviewed until months, if not like over a year later,
Mm-hmm.
and that's on top of the fact that they were all intoxicated. I mean, Julie Nagel even testified to like how like just how drunk she was, but
Yeah.
yet she's a reliable source of there being a black blob that was 6 feet on the front lawn, and she wasn't even interviewed until like 8 months after the fact.
Yeah. Let's take a look at some of these super chats because we're just so that we answer the questions before we move on to something
Sure.
else. I don't know. I don't want to keep you here all night. I don't know how much time you have, but this is so fascinating that we've finally gotten a chance to do this together. Suze, thanks for the 5. The library was missing footage from 12:45 to 12:48. No one looked at footage from 12:30 to 12:35.
Huh. So I remember David Unetti, in I believe it was in the one of the pre-trial hearings. I remember him saying, I believe 12:35 to 12:37.
Mm-hmm.
But
Was the
yeah,
missing footage.
yes, but I'm curious
That's what I thought
where
too.
Suze is getting that information from, because I don't recall seeing that before.
All right, let's move on.
That's
Mama She, thank you
interesting.
so much for the 10. Says, been listening since the start, just haven't been able to chat. Great show. Thank you. Charlie says it would be amazing to see microdots make films of the night from each person's perspective so that we can see what details align and where they differ. That's a great idea, Charlie.
Mm.
Thanks for the 5. Richie, if you're watching, idea for you. Christine, thanks for the 5. Mel, the police would ask the owner to come pick the dog up. That's what I think too. I don't think they'd be asking Allie to drive the dog to the person's house.
It's so weird.
It's so
Yeah, it
weird.
doesn't make any sense.
Scooter, thanks for the 5. We had a traffic stop outside of our house last night, 60 feet from the front door. One cruiser with flashing lights lit our house up like a Christmas tree. Yeah. Did it wake you out of a deep sleep? Amory, thanks for the Canadian $13.99. Why didn't Jen call Karen when she was outside and ask her and John to come in if John didn't go in the house?
Or even John either.
Well, she kept texting John, like, pull up behind me. Are you here yet? Pull up behind me. After the time where she said they had already left, right? Wasn't she texting that
Well,
John
no,
up until like
so
12:45?
she was texting um after the time that John's not only his location data on his cell phone but also his Apple Health data s- shows that he was inside the house.
Right.
So and she goes on to keep texting. I believe the last text she sent was at 12:45 a.m.
That's what I
So
mean.
that's
Yeah.
the other problem with the state's theory, is that Jem McCabe is claiming that Karen Reed was outside 34 Fairview till 12:45 a.m. and then she saw her leave,
Mm-hmm.
and but yet Karen Reed is connected to the Wi-Fi back at One Meadows at, what is it, 12:36?
Yep.
So
She,
how does
yeah,
that work out?
it doesn't. And that's
It
why they had to
doesn't.
change. And then I remember Lally in his opening statement said Karen hit John O'Keefe with her car at 12:45. And then he had to change his whole theory. And
But
it was wild.
did he ever like specify what the new supposed time was? Like,
I'd
I
have to go
mean,
back and watch his closing, and it was so painful that I hate to do
that's
it, but I don't
that's
know
what
if
I
he ever
don't
corrected
get.
the time. But I thought he
Like,
did because I thought I pointed out the discrepancy. Like, why did you say 12:45 in the beginning, and then by the end you're at
yeah,
12:32 or something?
I think I think he offered the 12:32 being like the last movement data on logged on John's phone, and then I think maybe he like said that, and then Karen struck John O'Keefe sometime thereafter and like kept it maybe open-ended or vague.
Mhm.
I may be forgetting,
We'll have to go back
but
and
my
check.
question is, like, for the jury, what is the timeline?
Right.
Because I don't think anybody can. I I'm curious, like, if people can like answer that, and I imagine all the answers will be different. Isn't that reasonable doubt?
Of course. Of course. If you were sitting back there and trying to figure out any other way that this could have happened, it's reasonable doubt.
Right.
I think
Exactly.
1 hour is not enough for closings in any world.
Oh yeah, agreed.
To be able to I mean, we watched a trial recently that was like 4 days long, and each side had 90 minutes. This was a 9-week trial. I mean, that was
Yeah.
so many things have to be hammered home so much better. So many people need to be cross-examined, like Renee Stonebridge. I mean, she could have given them every answer they needed on a silver platter.
Mm,
The brain
yeah.
doctor. Also, I don't think that Jen had Karen's phone number, because Karen did not have Jen's phone number, because that's why she had to wake
Right.
up the niece to call. So I don't think that Jen had Karen's number, but be wrong on that. Can the defense stop the Lexus from being staged at 34? I don't know why they did that. And they kept saying, look into the center console when you're going to view the car. And I don't really know what that was about. Do you?
Um I honestly like it just seems like another attempt by the Commonwealth to like attempt to insinuate uh that there's something suspicious or nefarious. But uh I can guarantee you, if there were, they would have presented the evidence of that at trial.
Right.
But of
Right. It
course,
was
if you leave it like, oh, it's this unknown nebulous thing that look out for that. It's like, well, the only thing I'm seeing is that you guys ripped out the entire console, and that the damage, the notable damage done to this car is stuff that you guys did. You removed the housing and you removed the console. I don't really see much organic damage that seems to have happened from an actual collision.
and was that really necessary? Because I will point you to all to the 36-page Canton PD report or MSP report. I can't remember who drafted the rubber
Oh
ducky
yeah.
gate, Richard Schiffer police report. But they went to his place of business with their tech guy, and they stuck a little thing into the USB port of his car and got all of his, just extracted his data. Well, first they didn't, because they didn't have the right Barilla software. But the second time they went there, they just did it. They didn't have to dismantle the entire dashboard. And same thing with Brian Walsh. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They put a little gizmo in there. They got the data and they went home. That was it. They didn't even have to take the car in. Hubert says no blizzard conditions here until later that morning, 2 to 3 inches of snow on the ground when OJO was found. Great having my favorite two intelligent ladies here. Oh, thanks, Hubert. We love you. Thanks for the 5. Joseph Kane says, Ginger says, happy, healthy 25, 2025 cupcake. Thank you, Joseph Kane. And also for gifting 1 plus 5, 6 more memberships. You're amazing. So generous. And we love you so very much. Thank you, Joseph. To those new members, welcome. Arlene, thanks for being with me for 10 months. And those darn ducking dimwits, aka Kelly, thanks for hanging around for 6 months. Yay, I love this channel. Scott McGinnis is here. Scott McGinnis is in the house. He says walking distance from D&E Pizza to Waterfall is not far, but walk to Chrissy Boy's house from Waterfall ain't that close at all. Why wouldn't Brian Albert or Higgy Boy give them a ride? Chris
Well,
Albert.
that's the other thing is like why you have all of these people who are driving from the bar to, you know, to the after party or wherever they're going. Uh, like I don't know, like most humans, most friends would be like, get out of here. You're not walking in this weather or like,
Right.
at this time.
I'll give you a ride. Hop in.
Right.
Hop in, man. Having a hard time with all the quoted timestamps, says Sharon. Yeah. Pierre, thanks for the 5, says, what if Allie dropped off Colin and Chloe at the library where Chris met them, then cut behind the library to Chris's home? P.S. Olivia's wicked smart. Wicked smart. It's a theory. Katie, Carla wanted to know what's a hash value.
So it's basically think of it like a fingerprint, like how a fingerprint is a unique identifier to a human being. It's a numerical value that is unique to a cell phone. So it's unique to like a digital data file. So in this case, cell phone extractions. And it's a way for digital analysts to verify that the extraction or the file that they've received is authentic and that it hasn't been altered or manipulated from its original form.
Okay, great. Charlie, thanks for the 20. I know the feds can't step in and exonerate Karen, but can they bring charges against anyone else involved? Or can the feds bring them back in to address conflicting statements made on the stand in federal versus state court? Well, I don't know that they're investigating the murder of John O'Keefe as much as they are investigating the investigation. So it remains to be seen. Usually they look for things like police corruption, right? So I don't know that any lay people are going to wind up being
What's
arrested.
fascinating though
Mhm.
to me is when you look at the affidavit probable cause for Matthew Farwell from the feds, you'll notice that, well, first of all, we know from what they've confirmed since that they started investigating that I think they said like about a year ago at the time that they announced Farwell's indictment.
Mhm.
And so obviously at that point, that's like what, like 2 years after the fact of when she was killed, they obviously can't go back to the scene and like, get physical evidence. And so, but what's interesting about that affidavit is you see just how much of it hinges around digital data and digital evidence, and that just because they couldn't get access to the physical scene or have access to things that are left at the physical scene, or even looking at the body for instance, that didn't hinder their ability to put together enough probable cause, put together a case. And it really speaks to just how valuable digital forensic data is in criminal investigations, how reliable it is, how credible it is. And,
Right.
the Commonwealth would have you believe completely otherwise.
Right. And Garino is the same guy that lost or couldn't find 35,000 text messages on Farwell's phone between Farwell and Sandra Birchmore. And yet they had the laptop in her laptop in their possession from day one, and they were all right there.
And
So,
couldn't find, or so he claims.
right. And I don't understand. That's another thing. Like, why are some of these people, like maybe him, willing to risk their entire livelihood, career, reputation for this case? It makes no sense to me. I just can't figure that out. Oh, Catherine, thank you for the 100. Says behind every great woman is another great woman. All right, that's right. Lifting her up. Thank you, Catherine Miller. I appreciate that. Any thoughts on that? Like, because we know they can run a competent investigation, because
Right.
the Brian Walsh investigation was top notch, right? And it's
Right.
same actors.
And
You
so is
got
the Canton Police Ducky investigation.
yes, Trooper Tim the Tool Man Taylor.
Mhm.
Right, wasn't it Trooper Taylor, Detective Taylor?
Yeah, that sounds right.
If he investigated the murder of John O'Keefe, we might have some real answers here. There might be an actual case.
I know,
Um,
right?
so what? It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense. Blood is thicker than water, maybe. I don't know. I don't get it. Except, well, but Proctor's, somebody said that they're like a second family. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the other thing is, why would, if they were so confident in their case and their evidence and their facts and everything, and they had nothing to hide, why would they lie about the fact that the Proctors and the Alberts were lifelong family friends and a second family for 2 years until confronted by a federal prosecutor and under the penalty of per of
the
federal
pains
perjury is
and
a big
penalties of
the
perjury.
pains and
Yeah.
penalties of perjury, but federal perjury is they don't have their second family members in that law enforcement agency who've got their back or whatever. uh so it's like, why did they lie about that for 2 years if there was nothing to hide?
Exactly. Exactly. I can't figure it out. I just can't figure it out. Thank you, very serious podcast consumer, for the 5 and just being glad to be here. And Forrest Dump for the 5, who says Olivia knows her shizzle.
What are
Joseph
you
King,
talking about? I have no idea what I'm talking.
you're a genius. Joseph Kane gifted another 5 memberships and says Ginger says a different kind of pickleball. Thank you. Thank you, Joseph Kane. Kim, I love Labradors. Thanks for the 20. Says dynamic duo. This is so informative. Thank you, ladies, for helping us see through all this Commonwealth gaslighting. Somebody's got to bring everybody down to earth, because I know that so many of you are getting all spun up into this ridiculousness. That's why I don't do Twitter. But I could see that it could make people crazy watching it and reading it every single day,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where you don't know what's real anymore. And really, as I've said 100 times, it's just, for me, it's common sense. John O'Keefe
Right.
was not hit by a car. That's what it comes down to for me. Boston Frank,
Well-
thanks for the 100, another 100. Look, Olivia's a GD, a Grateful Dead rock star, I'm going to say. Thanks to both of you for always keeping the content on the case and the evidence. It's welcome and it's rare these days. Happy New Year to you both. Happy New Year to you, Boston Frank 617. Yeah, I can't do the drama stuff. I can't do it. I can't. I don't have time for it. I have teenagers.
Mhm.
I have no time for it. But for me, I got involved in this case because the father of 2 of my kids grew up in Norfolk, and we met in Boulder, and we got married many, many million years ago. If you ask anybody on Twitter, I'm like a vampire. That's how old I am. And we met in Boulder, where I went to college, and he was from a little town in Massachusetts that he said was Foxborough, because everyone knew about Foxborough because that's where the Patriots played. But I came to learn that it was Norfolk, and he was telling me since then, 30 years ago or more, how corrupt the police in his town were, and the police in his county
Easy.
were, and MSP, and the run-ins that he would have with police when he was growing up, and how it was so horrific. And he had like this, what I thought was this like weirdly unnatural like fear of law enforcement because of these stories he would tell me.
Wow.
And we had 2 kids together. We got divorced, but we, remained friends. Obviously, we have kids together. And then when I started covering this case in January of 2024, that's what got my attention, was that I initially saw about the incident, and I initially saw, and they reported on the news, and it's still out there, that the law enforcement reports that they have ring camera footage of the incident. Right away, I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, wow, that's horrible. Like, she backed into him by accident or whatever. She hit him with her car. She probably didn't realize it. They've got ring camera footage of it, open and shut, right? Then I
Right.
started reading more into it, and then I saw it was in Norfolk County, and then I'm like, what? Norfolk? Everything clicked, and I started covering it because of my interest in the place and because of the things that he had told me 30 or more years ago when we were kids. And then I'm like, wait, he always said the police were corrupt and they were, and so that's what brought me into this case and my interest in it. And then in February, he passed away of a heart attack. And I never told, everyone was accusing me on Twitter of being somebody else and, being in this for clicks and likes and the
Paid
money and
PR
whatever,
apparatus of the defense.
being paid by the defense, part of their PR team. And it was on the day of his funeral that I told everyone why I was interested in this case. And, so they can all shut the duck up, because we come into this case for different reasons. You have ties to Mass. I have ties to Norfolk County too. It's not about looking for clicks or looking for likes. And trust me, when I started covering this case and talking about how I did not think John O'Keefe was hit by a car, because of my background as a litigator in injury cases, handling hundreds, if not thousands, of pedestrian cases and dog bite cases, I've never,
Mhm.
ever seen a pedestrian versus motor vehicle accident that did not involve injuries to the lower body. Ever.
Great.
It
It's
just
no
can't
bruising below the
happen.
neck.
None. And then people say, well, we ain't a bruise on the outside of his hand. Okay. If he shattered that taillight with his elbow would have shattered too.
The
Make it make sense.
Yeah, it's it's totally preposterous. And yeah, I mean, it would have fractured it. I mean, there would certainly not be an absence of bruising. I mean, that's the crazy thing, is like there's just no bruising below the neck. Cars have
Bumper
bumpers,
marks.
which is a leading edge.
Hmm.
And one of the hallmarking signs of a pedestrian vehicle collision is what you just said, bumper marks, like on the legs.
Hmm.
It's a first point of impact. And yet there's nothing on John's legs. No bumper marks, no bruising, no fractures, nothing.
No knee
Um,
injuries, no leg injuries, no hip
and
injuries. It just
like it,
doesn't happen like that.
yeah, it's, I mean, and then they're like, well, it was a side swipe, and I mean, the whole thing is it's so far fetched and preposterous. Like, what about Occam's razor? You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Occam's razor. But I mean,
But they'll
those
tell you that Occam's razor points to the fact that he was hit by the car because taillight. Because that
um
taillight magically exploded
the
into two
taillight that wasn't
shaped
there in the
pieces.
morning.
Right.
I
Yes.
mean, where was it? And you know what else is interesting about the taillight? Like, uh, they only found, what was it, three pieces on day one, but notably at the end of day one, after they already had Karen Reed's car in their possession, and it had snowed about a foot and a half more on top of where there would have supposedly been taillight pieces.
Hmm.
So they find three pieces on day one, and then they like find piecemeal these pieces over the course of the next few weeks.
They just
Um,
revealed themselves.
what's interesting to me is, like, if there's taillight, and a lot of which is this bright red reflective material, um, and certainly Brian and Nicole Albert, their family, they know what is alleged to have happened in their front yard, and people in town probably knew. Why why didn't Brian Albert or his family members, why didn't they find any of those pieces over the course of the next few
Exactly.
weeks, or any of the neighbors who are walking
Right.
their dogs, or why is it only the conflicted
Hmm.
Canton Police Department, or Trooper Proctor or Buchanan, who,
Berkowitz.
and how, like, isn't it just so uh incredible that at each time that they go over to 34 Fairview, they happen to find it's almost as if, like, they
Every
they came with a piece, or
single-
like,
Right. Like,
it's just like so perfectly coincidental
uh,
how it all worked out.
any golfers in the chat? You ever play golf with a guy who goes to like look for his ball in the woods and then all of a sudden like a ball falls out of his pocket and onto the ground? I mean, that's what it like reminds me of. Oh, look, I found it. I mean, they really want us to believe that the Canton PD is incompetent. The Canton PD is 100% incompetent because they couldn't find any of those giant pieces of taillight.
And here's the thing, like, don't get mad at me for scrutinizing this, or having a problem with this, because they could have very easily have eliminated any doubt or speculation by documenting
Mhm.
their searches, by documenting the evidence chain of
No log.
custody.
There's no log. There's no, and remember the jury asked for the
The
CERT
cert
team
report,
logs, right? Or report.
right?
And I
There
think
was
it
none.
doesn't exist, right?
Correct,
That
yeah, there was no cert report.
there wasn't one. They never documented where those pieces were found, when they were found, what time they were found, no measurements. There was never even a real location of where the John O'Keefe's body was found. There was no
they
outline, there was no marker, there were no little evidence, those little yellow
oh,
evidence
right,
cones with
yeah.
numbers on them. Nothing. Not
Well,
nothing.
this is a point that, like, I really think needs more attention, perhaps at the next trial. But the cert team is, it's like beyond the imagination why the cert team was ever called. However, if you want a if you don't want a credible, reliable processing of the scene, well, then it makes sense maybe why you would call the CERT team. If you look into, because I've done this, and I've been meaning to do a post on this, but if you look into what the CERT team does, and just historically what they're called to, they do not investigate murder crime scenes, or really crime scenes at all. They are there in terms of, like, in the closest thing to an investigation. The CERT team is called in for when vulnerable persons or elderly people go missing and are wandering. Maybe they're wandering in the woods or somewhere. The CERT team is called out because they have drones and that can do like thermal imaging of that expansive woods, or they have off-road vehicles. The CERT team is called in for crowd control at parades, like the Celtics parade, for instance, or protests. Like, they were called in for management of the Palestine, that one of the stories from Boston.com, I think it was about the Palestine protests at the college campuses.
Mhm.
The state police, the CERT team was called in to manage the crowds there. They are, and I believe, what, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name, but the lead state police trooper who like led the CERT team. Um, this is so annoying, but
Um,
he, someone in the chat will get it, I'm sure. But he testified to that, like, this was,
I don't think it was
I think
Tully.
Alan, no, it wasn't
No, it
Tully.
wasn't Tully. O'Hara.
Yes,
Kevin
O'Hara.
O'Hara. I think it was
Yes,
Kevin O'Hara.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Magnolia Gypsy.
I think Alan Jackson asked him this, actually, like, have you ever been called to a murder scene, or is this your first murder scene? And
Right.
sure enough, it was. And what, if you look at any of their other investigations, who do
That's
they
right.
call? For instance, in the Sandra Birchmore case, the first group that they immediately call from the state police to come out to process the scene is crime scene services.
Mm-hmm.
That's who comes out and processes crime scenes, especially murder scenes.
Right.
The CERT team, they have no capability for processing evidence or a crime scene. They You don't call them out to a front yard,
Yeah.
like, what is the explanation behind that? Oh, because it was snowing and there are difficult conditions, as if the crime scene services team haven't been called out to unique settings like that.
Right. 12 hours later, after the scene was left unsecured and another at least foot of snow fell. Right.
And that, yeah, and that's why we don't have things like what you mentioned before, forensic photography, where they include things like scales in the photographs and they take a number of pictures. In fact, the ARCO witnesses, I think it was Daniel Wolf, testified to how usually um in the photographs for like a case that they reference and that they look through, there's contextual photographs. So, like, one will be to show you where the evidence was found in the context of the whole scene, and then a closer up
Right.
version,
Mm-hmm.
and then really close up versions with the scale and different angles. And I mean, we don't have, I think maybe there's a few photos where there's a scale. I know that the medical examiner used one, but the crime scene photographs, and what about that? They took the crime scene photographs on an iPhone that was gotten rid of after the fact, and that's their explanation for why all of the crime scene photographs are stripped of their metadata. First of all, that makes zero sense, because all iPhones have extensive metadata on photographs.
Mm-hmm.
And why are they taking photographs on an iPhone? Why aren't they using like official equipment? And by the way, if they can take crime scene photographs on an iPhone, then why couldn't they take a photograph of Karen Reed's taillight when they found her vehicle
Oh,
on their
amen, sister.
iPhones?
Preach. Preach. There are no
Rant
photographs of that
over.
taillight. Okay, that is like basic. Again, this is common sense, right? You're Proctor. You've already decided this is a motor vehicle homicide. You're going up there sight unseen to seize that car without a warrant, I believe. You call
Mm-hmm.
Dighton to meet you there. Barrows was, I think, one of the most believable witnesses who testified in that trial. It's between, we should have like awards for this. It's between Barrows, Lucky, and the Kolakithises. I can't decide who I liked the best,
Oh,
but I thought they were all
yeah.
great.
And Mike Camerano, he was great. I
Yeah,
loved him.
like, and his wife as well. His wife was nice
Yeah.
too. But Barrows had no skin in the game. He
Right.
testified that it was cracked, right?
Yep. I think he said it was like cracked and possibly missing like one small piece or something like that.
Which is initially also what Kerry Roberts said, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you just go back to the reports, the reports are very telling.
Nobody took a picture of that tail light. I mean, I have never had, you ever have AAA come and like tow your car for some reason or whatever? They
Mm-hmm.
take pictures of your car they take like 100 pictures of your car before they will tow it because they don't want to be responsible for any damage.
Yeah. So I hope that um the defense at the next trial, I mean, I think obviously the defense is like probably taking a completely different approach at the next trial.
Yeah.
And I imagine we'll be calling a lot of their witnesses, and I hope they call the tow truck driver, because hopefully the tow truck driver has some documentation of the physical condition of the car, whether it be photographs or like, I think maybe he wrote down in his report that there was some damage to the taillight, but that's not very helpful. That's so broad and vague.
Who
um
rode the tow truck? I never saw a
the
tow
tow
truck
truck.
driver report. Have you?
Yeah. Yeah, I can send it to you.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen it.
But I mean, like, I don't even know what that mean. It could have been something where he was told by Proctor or Buchanan, yeah, there's this damage here, that's why we're towing it, and he wrote that down. Like, who knows? That's why I think it's important to get him on the stand. But more importantly, the tow truck driver can be so helpful for the defense, because uh you want to know a great way to just completely refute the Commonwealth's nonsense about the key cycles? Like, how they're
Yeah.
claiming, like, that's crazy to me still, how that's even uh what, like, up for debate, because it categorically could not have been the key cycle that they're referring to, because
Right.
Karen drove how many times in between, and
Mm-hmm.
those are not accounted for. But um the tow truck driver, why he could instantly refute all of the vehicle data and the key cycle stuff and the triggering events and all that, is because tow truck drivers write down what the reading is on the odometer of
That's
a
right.
vehicle upon towing it, and that number is also listed in the vehicle data. It's in the with each cycle or what have you. And so that is a way that they can quickly prove that this is not the key cycle that is relevant. This is a different key cycle.
Right. It couldn't have been her. And after that Phelps podcast, I think the juror that was interviewed or gave some or spoke to him or somebody, I don't know, said that they were relying on that. That needs to be really hammered into a lot more in the next trial. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's just one of the things, and that's why that podcast was also so helpful to the defense, is because it has that juror speaking and telling everyone, all of us who listened to it, exactly what went on inside that jury room and what they were hung
That
up
was
on
just crazy to me. I mean,
and what they
I don't
believed.
even like. I read the interviews. I think it was two interviews that Aiden did with jurors, two
Hmm.
separate jurors, and then I heard that portion of the interview with the juror, and I don't. I don't even. I probably should bite my tongue, but like, it's just it's bewildering to me how, I mean, clearly the jurors did not understand what reasonable doubt is, and
Mhm.
what their duty was, essentially. And because they're not tasked with coming up with another explanation. In fact, that is reasonable doubt.
Right.
And it seemed like that's what they were trying to do. um yeah, I just found it's scary, really. I mean, it's
I
scary
know.
what seemed to have gone on in that jury room. And yeah, juries are unpredictable, and we see it all the time.
All the time. Richard
So
Allen.
oh yeah, exactly. But yeah, I agree with you. It will be that kind of information. It will definitely be very informative and helpful for the defense
Yeah.
for the
So
next trial.
thank him for doing that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. Jessica, thank you so much for the 10. Leanne, no, that was my ex-husband who is the father of 2 of my kids. We've been divorced for well over 20 years, but thank you. Thank you. He died during the time that I was covering this case. And that's when people were accusing me of, doing this for clicks and likes. And that's when I told my story, because really, quite frankly, it's nobody's business, but they make it their business when they come for you on the cesspool of Twitter. Casey said, in the hospital staff document in the electronic health record, like epic patient belongings. I'm curious if the hospital staff ever noted what they had and who took possession of the items. Well, I think, yeah, you were going to say something about the clothing before, Olivia, right?
Yeah, I should probably save that because it's kind of
Okay.
a long.
All right, good.
Maybe
Will
we
you come
can
back
save that
again?
for. Yeah, of course.
Oh, good.
I can like put some stuff together and send it to you beforehand for that, so you have some, have
Some
it all.
visual aids. Visual
Yeah,
aids.
exactly.
Nikki says, wasn't it mentioned by one of the Three Stooges? We're told to drive by 34 on their way home from. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, they did. It was Yuri who said, I told the guys, on your way home, go by 34
Insane.
Fairview. Keep going back and forth that way to work. Like on your way home, go past it. On your way back, go past it in case, any evidence revealed itself. And sure enough, it did.
It's almost as if they didn't treat this like the murder of a fellow police officer. I mean, like, the flippant attitude with everything is just disgraceful.
Hey, Sergeant Good, you got a leaf blower? Could you just shoot home to your house and get your leaf blower out of your garage, shoot back? We'll just blow some of the snow around, see if we could, come across any pieces of evidence, because they found clear pieces of cocktail glass, but no pieces of red tail light. What?
Right.
I don't know anything about this. Do you? Robin says, what about the damaged fence on Meadows Ave? I don't know anything about that.
Oh, I saw a post about this, and I just think it's like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think the post was saying that there was a neighbor a neighbor to John O'Keefe, I guess, who had contacted the Canton police because over damage to a fence, and apparently the Canton police or someone said that they would pay the neighbor to like be quiet because with the implication that the damage was caused by the tow truck that towed John's car to the shop where they where they fixed the damage. But that
Oh,
doesn't make sense to me because like there wouldn't have been any need to tow the car. Like if Karen Reed had backed into his car, it would have been just like superficial damage. It wouldn't have been something that would, you know, debilitate the car from being able to be driven. So I mean that just I don't really know
yeah, I
what
can't speak
that's
to that because I
about.
don't really know the truth and veracity of it.
Right.
Um, But wow, Kathy bought me 20 matcha lattes and said, you and Olivia are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much. Thank you also to Mayhops who bought a matcha latte. Stephanie, $100 Venmo girl. So happy holidays. Thank you. Thank you so very much for your such kind generosity to the channel. And Kimmy, thank you for the Cash App. Says you're my fave. You see through all the BS. Thank you, Kimmy. I appreciate you so much. And Brenda, thank you for the 10. Says Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you guys. All of you guys. Olivia and Lynn, thank you so much. Appreciating our hard work. Thank you, Lynn, for the Venmo. And Nancy, thank you for the memo. You guys are so kind and generous today. Says happy holidays. Thank you so much. But your coverage on every case. I started out just watching the free Karen Reed shows, and now I check daily to see what you're covering. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate that. And Justin, thank you. Happy holidays to you too. Yeah, this is I mean, we have so much more to talk about. We haven't even scratched the surface. So for people that like are not familiar as familiar as we are with this case, it just probably seems like a lot, but it is a lot, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure you and I could do like a whole podcast
Whole
series just
series.
talking about all this stuff.
There's an idea.
Oh,
Okay,
maybe.
podcast people who are out there, companies, call us. We're good. We have good rapport. We have good banter. We don't talk over each other. The Little Lambo Diaries. I like it. I'll allow it. Boston Mass 781.
That's
It's very
hilarious.
like Silence of the Lambo. It's like Silence of the Little Lambo. That's what we'll call it. Silence of the Little Lambo. That's amazing. Amazing. All right, I'm going to let you go because I've kept you for 3 hours while I say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Do you have any final thoughts before I let you go?
Not really. Other than I guess about it can be like a little tease for when we do another show.
Yeah.
But I think one of the most important pieces of evidence at the next trial that will be like center stage and highlighted, and that hasn't really been highlighted until very recently at the Daubert hearing, is going to be the close.
Yeah.
I
Where
think
were they?
that is going to be
What
really
happened to them?
important. And we can go into just why that is on the next
Good.
time.
And I have questions about the microscopic pieces of taillight and the scrapings off the clothes. And yeah, that we didn't even get into that. I think the
Well,
clothes were
they're
in this.
microscopic pieces of apparent taillight. So
Apparent
they're
plastic.
plastic. We don't know that they're taillight.
Right. I
So
think it was apparent plastic, right?
and it was there's no evidence to support it being embedded. It was it was obtained by scraping the what's her name, Maureen Hartnick, who did scraping of the clothes,
Mm-hmm.
which scraped any debris off the clothes, and then whatever the debris that she got contained apparent microscopic pieces of plastic.
Everything was all in the same bag. Everything was all swabbed. We got so much more to talk about. In the meantime, I'm going to let you
Totally.
go. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for
Thank
finally getting this
you.
together with me. I love you with all of my heart. You are the smartest girl that I know. And you're only on Twitter, right? At Olivia Lambo. I have it down there with a little,
Yes,
like a little underscore, I think, after Lambo on
that's
Twitter.
me.
No YouTube channel, except you're welcome to come here anytime you want.
Awesome, because I have a lot to talk about, clearly.
Yay, let's do it again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy
I'll
New
see you
Year to you
soon.
too.
Happy New Year. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. All right, you guys, wasn't that amazing? How about that for a surprise, huh? Was that a good surprise? More is hidden than we know of, so dig on. Guess what else came out today, you guys? 2 decisions on Aiden's case. I have them. I don't know if anybody has covered them yet. I want to do a separate show about it. I don't know if anybody even knows that they're out, but there are 2 decisions out on Aiden's case. And I don't know what is happening tonight, but we can do that tomorrow if you'd like. Go over those. I don't even know if Mark Betterow has seen them yet. So I hate to stream jump anybody else, but I've got them. Can the defense have the clothes tested now? So much time has passed and so much condition. I mean, like the condition has deteriorated so much. And I would just say that it would be just worthless. I think any testing that was done on the clothes is worthless anyway, because of the condition that the clothing was in and the condition that the complete and total lack of chain of custody. And take this ban our way. So it's at Olivia Lambo on Twitter. Go follow her. She breaks everything down in a way that even I can understand it, because she is so wicked smart. Delana says, have a wonderful evening and weekend, all of you. Happy New Year. Thank you for another great distraction and stream. Thank you. I try and stay away from the stuff that's just like doesn't make me feel good. If it doesn't make you feel good, don't do it. Let's talk about the things that we know about. Let's talk about the things that we know that we can speak intelligently about. I don't want to talk about other people. It's not my thing. Scott, thank you so much. Everyone hit the like button to push it out, because they try and shadow ban these shows, just like they tried to cancel Blake Lively and suppress any good stories about her. Thank you so much, Cuzco. Me and Olivia makes so much sense. Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm going to definitely see you guys before then, because tomorrow, before my Buffs play BYU in the as such Alamo Valero Bowl, I don't know, whatever the hell they're calling it, with Deion Sanders, Travis Hunter, Shador Sanders, and the whole rest of my team. Let's come on tomorrow. We can go over the decisions in Commonwealth versus Aiden Carney that have dropped. Somebody else said there was another expert. There was a new expert. I don't know. If you have anything, send it to me. Fanbase@mlittlelaw.com. I cannot be your pen pal. Cannot pick your child up in California and fly them to South America to meet you there, even if you promise to give me 10 acres of land. Can't do any of those things. I read all my emails. I don't always get a chance to respond to them, but I do appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you to my moderators, who are the best moderators on YouTube. They are the reason this channel is a safe place for so many of you who don't ordinarily chat in other on other channels or other streams, and you do it here. So thank you to the moderators, because I couldn't do it without them. I really couldn't. And to all of you who had a not so great Christmas, I hope that I was able to distract you today for at least 3 hours of your day. And it's been a long December, but there's reason to believe maybe this year will be better than the last. Who sang that? One of the greatest poets of our time, Adam Duritz of the Counting Crows. Thank you, viewers, replay viewers, my channel members. I love you with all of my heart. And I'm going to see you real soon. Do the things that YouTube likes. Smash the like button, comment, share the stream out so we don't get shadow banned. And do all the nice and kind things, Karen but not a Karen, do, that YouTube likes. And I'm going to see you again tomorrow. So make sure you have that bell set, because you just never know what time it's going to be. Stay cool, stay kind, stay classy, my friends. It is not hard. It is so not hard. You will thank me for it, and your life will be so much better. Stay away from the drama. Peace. Love you all.